Krishna's Children, which is published by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. This book provides a complete guide to Krishna conscious parenting. With the help of a team of parents from around the world who are creating study materials, Mataji has been publishing Srimad Bhagavatam guidebooks for children. These guides provide children, parents, and teachers with a delightful way to study Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam, chapter by chapter. There are chapter summaries, key themes, analogies, critical thinking activities, character descriptions, and all with the aim of cultivating in our children a lifelong love for reading Srimad Bhagavatam. These books are available here, and these two Matajis, Kamal Sundari Mataji and Ganga Mata Goswamini, will be taking orders. So feel free to do that. Just a quick note on Mataji's next programs in this week coming up. So you can take note of these dates. On Sunday, tomorrow, the 22nd of January, Mataji will be at the Love Feast class at the New Jagannath Puri Temple at 11 o'clock. On Tuesday, the 24th of January, Mataji will be presenting the Srimad Bhagavatam class at 7:30 a.m. On Tuesday, the 24th, Mataji will be on Hindwani Radio, chatting with Krishangi Radhe on the Drive show on Hindwani, and the topic will be Parenting a Vedic Perspective. On Wednesday, the 25th of January, Mataji will be at the Lotus Park Namahata at 7 p.m. So be sure to note these dates. I now welcome Her Grace Aruddha Devi Mataji and enjoy the workshop. Please feel free to ask questions. If you need writing material, we do have writing material available, so let us know. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. It's so nice to be here finally at this beautiful temple, Shri Radha Radhanath Temple. It's been my dream to be here ever since I would see videos of this beautiful temple, like an oasis. I remember those very early years when we would watch a video on this temple about how it was such a beautiful place where everybody came together, with the times difficult times that this country has faced during that time, when there was so much apartheid. This was a place where, everybody could meet, and the East met the West, and, all types of people and races were coming together. And I would always think it is so inspirational, how pleasing it is to Srila Prabhupada to have a temple in this beautiful place. Actually, I've been very impressed with Durban. It's actually a very beautiful place. Just driving from the airport to here was such a wonderful, experience, just to see the beauty of this place. So finally I'm here, and I would like to thank the people who've been involved in getting me here. The management of Shri Radhanath Temple, and Jahnavi Mataji, who was the real force behind getting me here. She really, kept pushing and pushing till actually it happened. It wasn't easy for her, and there were so many logistics to take care of. So thank you, all of you, for being here and taking time out of your Saturday to be here to hear a parenting seminar that I try to share with people around the world. And so this seminar will be divided into three parts. It will be based on the ISKCON motto, books are the basis, purity is the force, books are the basis, preaching is the essence. Okay? So purity is the force. What is that? It means how, our practical devotional side by which we can make our lives pure. Prabhupada gave us certain, rules and regulations to follow, which will help us to cleanse not only our, mind, but also our body and soul, everything. So the rules, some of the regulations that Srila Prabhupada gave us, how we can follow them, and how we can help our children follow them. That's the focus of this seminar, is getting our children to take advantage of all these things that we are also trying to take advantage of, in our life. And how to inculcate these values in our children from day one. Because it was very dear to Srila Prabhupada. Among the three things that was very dear to Srila Prabhupada, the first one everybody can guess, which was book distribution. Second one is deity worship. And third one is Gurukula. Prabhupada, why Gurukula? Among the three top things, Gurukula was very top on Prabhupada's list. And because he knew that how important these children are. He said that if we make a whole generation of our children into good Vaishnava preachers, that will be the glory of your country and the glory of your movement as well. In other words, everybody, when there's a pure devotee in the world, then everybody benefits. Even the trees and the plants, they benefit. Right? The whole country benefits just by their presence. So, but if he said, if you lose even one, then that is a very great loss. Why? Because these children are not ordinary. They've already done a lot of devotional service in their past lives. And they're just here taking birth in our families just to finish it off, to go back to Godhead. So you can imagine how responsible this position of being a parent or a teacher for these children, or in any way, we may be affecting their lives. And you see, how sannyasis and gurus, when they come and visit and give their holy association, even for a few days, they all have time for children, isn't it? No matter in their busy schedule, they always take some time for the children. Why? Because they know how important that is, and how these children will be affected by association with saintly people. So here is a very nice quote by Srila Prabhupada. If we train children by developing and encouraging their propensity to love Krishna, then we shall be successful in educating them to the topmost standard. Then they shall happily agree to do whatever you ask them. So Prabhupada's formula for top education for our children is developing in our children the propensity to love Krishna. One would think that, well, these are two separate things. I have to raise them as good devotees, but at the same time I should take care of their mundane side, the academic side, by which they're going to get good jobs and all, and take care of themselves. Yes, that's very important, because it's a fact. 90% of our children are going to become grahasthas, and they have to learn the responsibilities of grahastha life and how to take care of their families. But what Srila Prabhupada is saying is that when we raise them as good devotees, they will become, everything else will follow. They will become good grahasthas. In other words, the material follows the spiritual, not the other way around. The material qualities are waiting at the door of the devotee, waiting for them to accept them. All the demigod qualities are there for a pure devotee of the Lord. All the demigods are subservient to a pure devotee of the Lord. And he already has those opulences. Everything, their biggest wealth, their learning, their knowledge, they know about Krishna. So that's why they're knowledgeable, knowing about Krishna. I mean, the gopis, they were such simple village girls. But whenever they were tested by Krishna, they came out with very high Vedic philosophy. They were simple village girls, but they didn't lack knowledge, right? So anybody who's a devotee cannot be foolish, cannot be ignorant. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada is saying that when we make our children devotees, they will automatically become good in every facet of life. So what is Prabhupada's vision for our children? His vision for the reason why he wanted Gurukulas is because he wanted to develop in them good character. This was his philosophy of education. He said that today the world, even the world where there's a lot of money, high education, high birth, everything, but does that mean that people have good character? Are they happy? Is wealth the formula for happiness? Is education making people happy? Prabhupada in fact said that if you're very, very knowledgeable, but if you're very proud, nobody wants you. A proud scholar, he's not appreciated, really. Right? So wealth and scholarly learning is not a formula for good character. But what gives good character is Vedic education. Why? Because it's teaching us qualities such as humility, tolerance, self-control, mercy. Even 50 years ago, influential people in India were sending their kids to Gurukula. Even though they had everything, they had all the money, all the facilities, to just keep them at home. They could give them private tutoring and they could pass all the way till college. They could do. But why were they making sure that these kids went to Gurukula? And you see that in the Shastras. All these great acharyas, they all went to Gurukula. And these were powerful personalities, very powerful families. But they still went to Gurukula. Even Krishna went to Gurukula. Why? Because they found how important it is to the need for training our children with good qualities. And this Gurukula used to be only for first 10 years of child's life. It's not forever. We think that, oh, Gurukula, they've been sentenced, they've been sent away, now I'll never see them. No. Just first 10 years of child's life, because they considered it so important to give these foundational things to the children, these qualities in them. Because these qualities will help them become motivated in anything that they do in life. Even materially, these qualities give motivation. When we make our children devotees, they actually become very motivated to study well. Because people think that when you give them, when you give them shastra and good training as devotees, they'll just end up becoming pujaris in the temple. What's going to happen? How are they going to live a Vigrahastha life? But actually, children who are trained well in spiritual life, they actually become very good entrepreneurs. Just like, in the Shastra you see Rajarshis, Yudhishthira Maharaj and all these great personalities, they knew how to rule. They were powerful rulers. They knew exactly what it takes to have peaceful society, how to protect the people from, foreign invaders. They had all those. They were great Kshatriyas. They could fight face to face in front of the battle. They were Maharathis. But yet, they were such saintly kings. Because they were saintly kings, they were great Maharathis. You see Arjuna, and all these 5 Pandavas, they were such powerful personalities. Yet, toward the end of the battle, when everybody had died, they were feeling responsible. Yudhishthira Maharaj was feeling responsible for the killing and blamed himself. And then, when they had to go for the first time in front of Dhritarashtra, right, they asked for forgiveness. They were so humble. Coming in front of this person whose son had given them so much trouble. For years and years they were hounded, suffered, had no food, went hungry in the forest, hounded by Rakshasas, took everything away in the gambling match, right? Even burned their house. Everything. They're coming in front of Dhritarashtra and truly feeling as though they need to ask for forgiveness. Dhritarashtra was ready to kill them at that time. He was so angry. But seeing their humility, he lost it. See? Same thing with Gandhari. She was so angry. So what I'm saying is that even a great Kshatriya who is so blessed, so favored by the Lord, we see in them qualities of forgiveness, mercy. When everything was taken away from them and they were in the forest with nothing, and Draupadi was there crying, weeping. She was a queen, a princess. And she told Yudhishthira, we have nothing to eat. Look at our condition. This is not fair. We should go and get our rights back. And what did Yudhishthira Maharaj say? Forgiving is victory. You see? So what I'm trying to say is that when children develop this good character, we cannot not see the value of developing in our children good qualities, good character, as a basis for everything that they want to do in life. It comes first. And this is what Prabhupada's teachings are giving us, his principles of how to raise children that I'm going to now describe to you. His formula for raising children. Do you know how many letters Srila Prabhupada wrote? There's tons and tons of letters to his disciples in the Gurukula and elsewhere, who had so many questions about how to raise children. He had an answer for everything, even their diet, and the morning program, and so many things. Prabhupada had an answer to everything. He guided them on everything. When I started writing my first book, Homeschooling Krishna's Children, I started to investigate and see what Prabhupada has said, what are his feelings about raising children, and I was shocked. It was all there. Prabhupada built a house in which everybody can live, no matter whether we are homeschooling, whether we are sending our kids to school, whether we are doing some other kind of alternative education for our children. The principles are given here. We don't have to go anywhere outside to find. We don't need big degrees. We don't need, degrees on child development and Prabhupada, like training in Montessori or Waldorf or so many things, of course there are some advantages to the schools, because they are better off than many other schools, if you are trying to choose which school. But really, his formula is so universal. It can fit into anybody with any type of circumstance. So, because Prabhupada, why he was so much against public education is because, and he even, called them slaughterhouses. Well, it used to be, one would, maybe 20 years ago, one may have felt, oh, this is a little bit far out statement and all that. But now, you see the type of education. And the reason why he was so critical is because he said that schools are not meant just simply to teach our children how to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. He says these things are very natural to anybody. Do you have to train a child how to eat? Maybe carefully, so he doesn't drop anything. But he knows where to put the cookie. It's straight in the mouth, right? He doesn't put it here. He knows cookie is here. Does anybody need training in sleeping, defending? No. He says, so schools are meant to give you ways to sleep better, and eat better, and things like that, how to have a, maybe in a better way, in a more, more elaborate surroundings, or, sleep in more beautiful beds. This is not about what education is. And Vedic education is just the opposite. It's how to lessen these 4 basic needs, how to reduce them. That's Vedic education. That's why in the Vedic culture we had so much respect for sadhus. Why? Because their demands on these 4 things was very minimal. The need for these 4 things was very minimal. So keeping that in mind, I will just share a little bit of my own experience raising my children. When my children turned 5 years old, I started thinking, okay, where am I going to send them? Obviously, the first thing is school. Nobody really thinks about where I'm going to send them. Maybe what kind of school or which school you may want. So in the same way, I was thinking, where public school, private school, should I pay that much more for a private school? Is it better? Well, just for safety, we opted for a private school. And they went to school for about two to 3 years, and to a private school. And I thought, I'm giving them a good education, academic education. I felt satisfied. And I thought, okay, when they come home, I'm going to teach them give them my values. As devotees, we all have this aspiration to share with our children Krishna conscious values. And so I thought, I'll do that. And but I was a little bit disappointed, because by the time they came home, they were so tired. After being in school, trying to change their whole way of thinking this way, from, total different environment of, materialism to devotional aspect, I was struggling. And I realized how little I could do with them. Maybe a little bit here and there, not much. And then I thought, and then I also wanted to read Krishna book to them and teach them Mridanga. So it was a huge struggle. And then I started volunteering time at the school, and seeing if I would volunteer time, I would see what's going on. I wanted to know. I was just barely a new devotee, so I was kind of like a little bit fired up, that kind of fired up. And so I went and I would sit in classes, and both, academically and value system, I was a bit disappointed. Academically, I felt, if your child is a little bit even above average, he's not challenged enough. My son finished his math 20 minutes early. He was just sitting there twiddling his thumb, So, and that happens with many children, not just my son, right? And if you're below average, you're just kind of struggling. So it's really meant for average children. So either way, one is disadvantaged. And also in terms of moral values, schools are secular institutions where any talk of God is not allowed. At least in America, it's secular. You cannot you can't speak about religion in school over there. And so one time I sat in my older son's class, and the teacher had spelled God with a small g, So many things were coming, just little things. And also, of course, in my younger son's class, there was a teacher who would come, and her boyfriend would come, and she would behave intimately with him in front of the kids. And so, because we had a very open relationship, my kids would come and tell me these were the problems. And also they would make fun of him when he would have a shikha and bring his food, and they thought, he made fun of his lunchbox. And this problem was not just with me. When I do seminars, so many parents come. My kids, they are really ashamed to take this prasad. I have to cook every day, pizza for them or a sandwich for them. They're really ashamed, Also, they feel left out. So many problems, as a devotee. And it's really not fair on the kids, because you're trying to raise them as devotees. You're telling them this is the lifestyle at home, but when they go to school, then it's a different lifestyle. They make friendships over there, but we tell them, okay, they are not so good because they are karmis, but you should hang out with devotees. So it's a little bit of unfair situation from them when you really look at the whole thing, right? So what do we do? Is there a way we can, well, this is what I'm going to talk to you about. That is a fact of life, that our children are going to school. In terms of Gurukula, there are very few and far away. And a lot of us are not willing to send them to Gurukula, right? Homeschooling is a challenge for many of us. You may not, even though I would encourage you to go for it, it's actually a very wonderful thing that I tried. And but if you cannot, then okay, you're sending them to school. So what should we do? So here, when we went to a place called Boise, and there was nothing there, practically. No devotee association, no devotees had, been there. Sometimes traveling Sankirtan devotees had traveled through that and given some books to citizens there, of Idaho there. And so we ended up there. My husband got a job there as a project manager in a multinational company. And we found, and after living in Chicago for 5 years and having so much association, this came as a shock for us. We thought, what are we going to do? Nothing here. So the only way to do it is to create association. They start a preaching center, invite people, and this way we try to make devotees and make our association. This was the only way, and we tried to do that. We opened our home and made into a preaching center and invited people in, and this way, we tried to make devotees, we invited devotees to come and visit, and this way we started a temple at home. And so the kids started going to school, but like I said, I was dissatisfied, and my husband as well. So we decided to try homeschooling. And in America, it's a very well-established institution, homeschooling. Most of the families are pretty well-to-do because they can afford to sit at home, the mothers, and the husbands go to work. And they're mostly well-to-do Christian families. And over there, you can buy a curriculum and for the whole year, and you just teach them through that curriculum. It's not very difficult. So I thought, I'm going to buy this one curriculum, and I'm going to begin and see. And I was very nervous, very, very nervous, because I thought, am I really playing with my children's lives? And then I said, okay, the best way to do it is to do it in summer. We have 3 months off. And if that works, then we'll continue. Otherwise, they go back to school. And so I bought the grade levels, the curriculums, 2 curriculums, and I started teaching them in summer, 2 hours a day. Within 3 months, I finished the entire curriculum. That finished, which something that takes 1 year, we finished it in 3 months. And they were studying like 2 hours a day. And the rest of the time, we had a lot of activities. We both were quite inspired to expand, to do things, to do programs, hold festivals, go out, have book tables and prasadam tables. We were fired up. So a lot of our time was do these preaching things. And so they were actively taking part in that. So if you ask my children, what did they do in homeschooling, they can't remember hardly any study. What they do remember is a lot of activities, a lot of fun activities. All the activities that Srila Prabhupada wants us to do. Harinam, book distribution, tables. We were even doing prison programs, going to prisons once a month, taking our children with us. Imagine, and when they saw that, they never wanted to commit a crime, right? You never want to do that. So this was the education. Okay. So people think education means sitting behind a desk 8 hours a day, you're sentenced. That's not education. A lot of the education goes outside the school. Most of the education, what we give them. When you take them on trips, vacations, they learn so much. National parks, they learn so much geography, about plants and nature. So many things. You go, you take them on a trip, they learn a lot that you cannot give through books. You cannot give that all entirely. Books are needed, but you can't give everything through books. So I was doing. So my curriculum that I will be discussing very soon, what I was doing was, we were doing a morning program. Let me go to the next slide. So before I talk about the do's and the don'ts, so this is the first section, preparing the home environment. What we should do to make a home conducive for the spiritual growth. So naturally it begins at home. Charity begins at home. What should we do? And these are basic things that all of us know. Already we know. But just a little reminder, right? These are the very basic things that help us actually go back to Godhead. Prabhupada said, if you just do one thing, if you just eat prasadam all your life, you'll go back to Godhead. He said. We know that good association will take us back to Godhead, right? So these are very basic things. Parikshit Maharaj, even at the end, when snake bite was to come, Shukadeva Goswami was reminding him, remember, you're not this body. These are very basic things, but it's not so easy, right? We are struggling with these very basic things, and some of us are doing it very sincerely. But the first thing I think is, I'm going to go do the don'ts, what we should not do, and because it's more fun, and then we go to the do's. So we are avoiding television and limiting internet. So you may be thinking, well, I already know everything, but let's think a little bit deeper into this. Why? The television, it breaks all the 4 regulative principles. These are the 4 regulative principles we are aware of, that Prabhupada gave us. No meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and no gambling. Right? Now, it's some things maybe we may be still struggling with, even though we are devotees. Right? Perhaps not meat eating, but maybe something these are things that we are, as a devotee, everybody knows about it. But these are the very things that television is breaking. You turn it on. These are the very things that they're breaking. And you may think that I already know that. I'm not getting affected by it. I am a devotee, so how can I believe in all this? It's just on. It's just on. But the fact is that just by seeing it, one gets contaminated. Why? Because there are 2 problems with television. One is the content, and the second is the medium. Okay? Medium. So the content is a big problem. We all know that. It destroys, it breaks all the 4 regulative principles. Okay? And then even if we say that, no, it's okay, I'm not affected by it, it's the medium. Medium means the way it's given to us. The screen is a very powerful medium by which we become affected, we become addicted to it. The way it's presented to us, we don't have to think. We simply take it. When you're reading a book, you have to decode the words. Imagine the picture in your mind, right? When you're reading a book, you have to imagine the picture in your mind. So in other words, your brain has to work. It's active. But when you're seeing something on television, everything is given to you. Everything is spoon-fed to you. And you sit down in front of the television and you watch. And they've done research that the brain activity that during the time that you're on the screen, whether it's internet or television, is 0. And that is why today in the world, children are having their math and skills are going down, and English skills are going down and down every day with this new generation. Why? Because of so much exposure to this medium. Is because the brain is dull. The brain becomes lazy, in other words. The radio also is better, because when you're hearing, you're not seeing it, so you still have to make a picture in your mind. But when it comes to television or any electronic media, you don't have to do anything. You just take it. And that's why, it used to be that they would change the scene every 1 minute. Can you believe it? Now they have to change the screen every 15 seconds. 15 seconds. If they don't, people will get restless. They're so restless because this addiction to internet and television has created a problem where the mind has become so restless to get more and more feeding that it's not able to tolerate. The old movies, have you seen the old movies from India, the black and white ones? If you watch it now, I don't think you can watch it. Even for people in my generation, it's going to be hard. Because those are the movies we watched. And there's a scene and there's somebody crying, and they're crying like for 5 minutes. And you think it's funny, but it used to be really effective at that time. The emotions that were expressed in that crying, and it'd go on. And now my son, if he puts that for his students at university, they cannot handle it, So in other words, because the mind, they've done research. Anything they make, they have to change it quickly in 15 seconds. So this is what is done to our brain. We've become restless. Productivity in companies has gone down. Because anytime they're on the computer, they have to keep checking their phone. Productivity has gone down. Besides that, the brain becomes wired permanently in such a way, it's permanently damaged, especially children being raised on this electronic media. For us who haven't been raised, well, our brain has already formed already, so the damage is less. But for children who begin their life being addicted to internet and television, their brain has permanently changed for the worse. So it's a very serious thing. So anyway, so this is the medium. You know, Urmila Mataji wrote a very nice article in Back to Godhead. She called television the one-eyed guru. You know, we hear our guru once a week in the temple, maybe more, maybe a little bit more, maybe less. We gather around him, we hear him, but this guru, the television guru, the one-eyed guru, how many times a day do we watch the television guru? Twice a day, if not more, right? And everybody faithfully gathers around it to hear. The problem with television is that it's given to us at a very weak moments, when we are relaxed, when we allow the content to just go into us, when we're very weak, actually, in our bedrooms. So we have to be very careful about these things. So there's many arguments that people give. What about the educational programs? There are some very good educational programs. People come and tell you, they're so proud. My kid learned geography through television, all the countries and the names. Or they come and tell you, you know, they learned their alphabets through this. So, but it's not without consequences. It's not a very smart way of learning. Like I said, the interaction is not there. If you sit with a book, there's interaction. And that creates a sharpened intellect. And that I will talk in my next section, Books are the Basis. When there's a discussion, you know, for example, the Bhagavatam was spoken as a discussion between the sages of Naimisharanya and Sutta Goswami. So when we have a discussion, an interactive session, then our brain becomes sharpened. And we start to think critically. So that is taken away. So your child may learn English or geography from a nice show on the television, but his brain, he's not getting more intelligent because of that. In fact, he's getting less. The brain actually becomes dull by learning through this kind of medium. So we have to bring this culture of books back. This culture of books that we began with is fast disappearing. In India especially, you know, there's no culture of books left. Nobody goes to the library at all. The information age came so fast and so strong that people were just totally swept. In America, you have still of that culture. Anyway, so we have to be very careful what we're giving them. And so internet is even worse. At least television, you can control it. You have a certain number of channels and you can turn it off if some channel is bad for the child. But internet, there's no sure way of doing that. And so it means that when you're on it, you can be on it. If you're on it for a long enough time, you may end up being on sites that are very questionable. And I'm not just talking about it, just by hearing about it. I've actually experienced that. I travel all over the world and I do these seminars and I interact with teachers, parents, and they've told me these stories of how their child has been affected by this smartphones, to the point that because they've been given early in their life, they've ended up on sites that are very, very bad. One mother came to me crying that her child is in India. Her child is addicted to pornography. And when you find out that child never did it purposely, what does he know about all these things? If you're long enough on the internet, it's just 2 clicks away. You'll end up on sites like that, and there's nothing you can do to control it. So I tell the parents, please get to know about it, educate yourself. It may not have happened in your time, but it's all there now. Times have really changed. We are not living in that old ages where these things were not there and we could, be safe. It's a different era now. So, and in America, in the West, it's a big problem now among children, you know. And these children are not necessarily unloved. They have good families. But it's the nature of this medium. If you give it in their hands, they can, what is there to control them? There's a person called Ted who does shows on this, and he's helping people realize and understand this, and he's done a lot of shows, and he's interviewed these young people, and the suicide rate is getting higher and higher in schools due to social media. And every way is increasing because the children make their identities through the social media. It's everything for them. Cyberbullying, you know, when they're bullied, they're willing to give their life because why? They are the ridicule of their friends. It means everything. This is how they build their relationships. Gone are the days when they're coming home and asking their parents, how do I look? Do I look nice? Who do they go to? Their friends on social media. They make the standard of whether you're looking nice or not. And guaranteed they're going to be disappointed and frustrated. We've lost that connection with our children that we need. And how do we make that connection is by putting these things away and actually doing things with them. Gone are the days when they would take out a violin, you know, and play the violin together as a family, or whatever, the harmonium. Huh? Now everybody sits in front of the television. That's their family entertainment, right? So we have to bring this culture of family and togetherness and bring back and really spend quality time with our children, so they get a higher taste and they don't feel compelled to go to, you know, things like that. And we have to be very careful in giving them these phones so early in their life. So what do? It's an internet age. In all the schools, they require to have internet. Even the primary school children now, they have to have iPad, a new iPad every year. And the parents have to pay for that, you know. Some reporter, by the way, interviewed Steve Jobs, the owner of Apple. He says, oh wow, you know, of the iPhone, you know, of the iPhones, and they asked your children must be having, you know, the very latest. He said they don't even use it. They don't even give these smartphones to the children. There's a school in California, the Silicon Valley. 75 of the kids don't have iPhone. They're not giving iPhones by their parents. Because these people work in that industry, they know how harmful it is, how much damage it can do to them. So what do? It's a world where we are forced to have internet. We have to have these phones, you know. So we must, it's just like the example of having a tool. You know, if you have a hammer, then you use the hammer for hammering a nail in or something like that. And then when you don't need it, you keep it away. You don't carry it around. Do we have a relationship with it? Do we carry in our pockets all the time, oh, I don't know when I'll need the hammer? No. You use it, you keep it away. So in the same way, the internet. You use it for the things you need. Doing an email, checking some statistics, you know, directions to a place or something. Even some Krishna conscious things that we have to have, right? But you put it away. Don't keep it on always on mode. This is giving our children the wrong image. And try to, you know, give it to them at a later age, not early in their life. Wait. And so many young people, when they're interviewed, they cry. They said, I wish my parents did not give me these phones. I've lost my childhood. They learn everything from the internet, about sex, about everything. It's from the internet. Huh? So we have to be very careful about these things and do it in a practical way, in a proper way. It's addictive. Why is it addictive? Because they've done research that this too much of internet releases a hormone called dopamine, which is the same hormone as when you take drugs. You know, like cocaine. What makes a cocaine user take more and more cocaine is because of this hormone that is released when you take when a person takes the drugs, which forces you to take more and more. Well, gaming, video games, too much of internet releases the same hormone, with the result that the children cannot stop handling it and looking at it. You know, in India, one mother was telling me that when I told my child that you cannot have it, he threatened me with suicide. Because they're already addicted. They cannot imagine a life without going on hours on this internet. For them, their whole life will crash, right? So they're very, very addictive. So we have to be. It's called internet addiction, you know. So taking drugs is substance abuse, right? But internet addiction is a different, it's psychological abuse. You see? So anyway, I know there's going to be a few questions on this. I hope so. And so we'll quickly go through these because these are very well known to you. Morning program. I can't underemphasize the importance of a morning program. Even if you cannot do it at 4:30, do it. I know with children going to school, it's so difficult to get them in the morning, wake them early morning to do a full morning program. Well, one can be flexible and do it for a short time. Now the thing is that sometimes you're not able to, for example, even, if you cannot go to the temple or something, do it at home. Do it at home. And it's such a nice thing. They've done research that if you do something for 66 days, it becomes a habit. So if the children are trained to do, even for 10 minutes, get up in the morning and sing all their prayers, it does something to the heart. It purifies the heart. We're connecting to the Supreme Lord and His holy name. So it really helps. It's like a shield. It's a shield and armor, so that when they go out into the world, they're ready. They're ready to tackle it. So one can be very flexible, but the important thing is that do it without fail. We were running a preaching center. Our programs went late. My husband also came home late from work. The kids wanted to play with them. So morning program didn't start early at all. It started at 6:30 most of the time, right? But we made it a point to do it. And sometimes if it was even later due to sickness or whatever, we still did it. The idea is you get up in the morning, the first thing is you remember the Lord and His holy name. And you should try it and you see what it does to you, even as adults. If you start your day like that, you see the difference it makes to the psyche and to our whole vision. If I cannot make it to the temple, I do the whole thing in my room. But and I feel so refreshed. I mean, like I have to do it because it's become a habit. When my kids went to college, and at that time also, this became a savior for them. Just being in that habit, it was easy for them to pick it up. So anyway, so it's very important. It cleans the body and the mind. Eating prasadam, we all are very much aware of that. It does something. Eating is something which hits the soul directly. It's an activity that goes straight to the soul. And all of you know that. Eating prasadam versus non-prasadam, it does something to the mind, right? It pollutes the mind. Food that's cooked by a non-devotee. Who's made the bread in the morning? Somebody who's smoking bidi? His consciousness is going into that? Or a devotee making it? It's a huge difference. It's like a painting, an artist painting. If it's all modern and bad art, then all the your impression is, your mind becomes disturbed, right? If it's a nice, beautiful forest scene, well, you feel good, right? It affects the mind. Same thing with the food. This was a weapon that Lord Chaitanya used, chanting the holy name and a spoon, right? Weapon was prasadam. We can change the hearts, even of our family members who are not devotees, just by giving them prasad. It's powerful. It's really powerful. Even if they're not devotees, we can change their hearts. So for children, it may be requiring a little bit extra work because their senses are wild, especially little children. They want so much variety, right? But we can try to do our best and see. And going outside for pizza parties also may be a little challenging. May not be devotees or school friends, or they want to go, and you cannot deny them, really. Well, encourage them to take their own food. What I would do is, give them their own pizza or a big pot of pakoras and a big pot of rice. It was always safe. So if there's a potluck, we took our own potluck and we had from that potluck. And the pakoras, and good pakoras cooked in nice ghee, and all that is actually very good. It's better than all the prasad gathered there, all on the table. And the child can be, it's inspired, and he doesn't mind. It's us parents, we become weak. My child is not eating with the rest of them. Is he going to feel left out? What is he going to feel? I feel bad for them. Maybe they can have this, everything. It's okay. It's vegetarian. After all, it's vegetarian. Well, we have to understand that we are not vegetarians, but we are Krishnatarians, right? What the formula that we applied in America, in order when we were invited out, and there were many times you just had to go. My husband had, parties, office get-togethers, and he had to go, and we had to go with him sometimes. And so we took these big pots of pakoras and rice and everything. And if people invite you to your home, then the way you can get out by saying, we don't cook in kitchen that cooks meat. Otherwise, they put all kinds of vegetarian stuff in front of you. Hey, I promise you, this is vegetarian. I didn't put anything in it. No onions, garlic. But something or the other, because they don't consider that vegetarian. So many things, right? So many things they can put in there. So you really cannot have it. So the criteria that you follow is that I don't eat food that's cooked in a kitchen that cooks meat. And if you follow that rule consistently, they actually really respect you for that. But if you keep changing your scene and you keep saying one day you eat and another person's house you don't eat, they're just going to laugh at you. So keep that consistency. We are devotees. We eat food that's been cooked by devotees in kitchens that don't have any meat. Okay. And you see, these things will help a child become advanced very quickly. That's the whole thing. We're trying to make powerful children. They're already powerful from their last life. We're trying to make them powerful. In fact, little children are very cooperative. They go to birthday parties and they ask, do you have eggs in these cakes? And they'll say, they say yes. And, oh, there are little chicks in there, huh? And stuff like that. They say cute little chicks. And then they'll be very proud because they know they have the support of their parents. So they're very proud. And they're cute. Actually, they're ahead of you. My younger son was always saying that he was always excited going to these parties because he thought he had a secret pact with Krishna. He had some secret pact with Krishna. Krishna, I'm not going to eat anything that you don't eat. So these things, it looks far out, but actually children are like that. They are actually very, very, very open to this. We have to make a firm resolve. It's us who actually become weak in this respect. Good association, very important. Adult association is very important, as well as friends, good friends. Prabhupada said, children are like pastry dough. You mold them into different types of pastries, that's how they'll become. They're malleable. You give them good association, they become very nice children. You give them bad association, they become bad. Very simple. He says, nobody grows up smoking and drinking. Nobody's born smoking and drinking. It's developed by habit, by association. You give them good association, they will. So growing up, they must have good association of devotees, of senior devotees, sannyasis, gurus, your own example. Whatever role models you put in front of the children, they will become. You see in society today, role models, film stars, athletes, these are the role models, and children get really disappointed, because somebody who's been really good falls down in their eyes. It doesn't stay too long before you hear of somebody very good family man, mode of goodness, everything wonderful, and very soon they've had an affair with somebody. And if the child sees that, what kind of example he gets? If he follows, it's even worse. Or they just get skeptical, But Krishna conscious role models are different. Krishna is always part of the picture. Always part of the picture. So the few good friends are enough. We don't need a whole bunch of friends. Good devotee friends. In other words, yeah, they're school friends, but don't let the relationship become very intimate with them. Intimate relationship means sharing food with them, sharing a bed with them, house, bed with them. This is called intimate association. This you can avoid, even if they have school friends. This is where the contamination begins. Just playing on the playground is fine, right? They can play on the playground, they can have friends. They can even invite them to their own home. Right? You can invite their friends in school to your own home. Many, many times. But going to their homes, maybe, for a sleepover especially, is very bad. Why? Because you don't know. They may be watching video games all night. You have no control over that. It's okay if they did not get that. There's always good friends that they can go over to their house. You have to just pick and choose. No karmic child in school also is friends with everybody. Everybody has their little groups, their favorite groups, who they hang around with. It's okay if our children have some special group that they hang around with. We don't need to feel like, oh my gosh, they are misfit in society. How will they get along? They're not misfit. In fact, devotee children, they appear so intelligent. Why? Because they've got a perspective in life. You may not read the newspaper every day, but if somebody tells you about some popular person, you can easily give a Krishna conscious perspective in it. That's why people, when they hear devotees, say, wow, where did you get it? And you tell them, you are not this body with a soul. Really? Man, this is deep, deep, deep. They'll tell you. These simple things they don't know, right? So devotee is never foolish. Our children may be very different, but they never will appear foolish, because our philosophy is so deep. They will always appear intelligent, even if they know the basic things about Krishna consciousness philosophy. They don't need to know every film star in the world just to keep themselves in society or keep themselves informed. If somebody tells them about a film star, sure, they can give a perspective on it. Well, it's definitely going to be about their degrading behavior, right? Or maybe it's a movie, yeah, it's good. Okay, fine. So in other words, we should not be afraid of being a devotee and doing what a devotee is meant to be. In America, there's a big thing, the police people they have a thing called, say, no to drugs. And they're going around empowering these young people, that even in a society where, young society where people are saying drugs, let's take drugs, say no, that's cool. It's cool to say no, right? So it's cool to say no. So this way we can help them. Deity worship, this is the last one, is a foundation of religion for all humanity. This is a very wonderful quote by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says that in homes where there's no deity to worship, Children grown up in such an atmosphere, they will become materialistic and atheistic. Why? Because they don't have a form on which to dwell on, a form of the Lord. Of course, the temple is here, if you can bring them every day, right? Which is very difficult sometimes. So we need deities also at home. So therefore, deity worship, it helps the children see Krishna as a person. As the world is becoming more and more impersonalistic every day, all this social media and everything, everybody wants to stay at home, right? Who wants to come to the temple? Oh, the Zoom is there, right? We will hear on Zoom, right? And it's convenient for some people, of course, it's a practical reality. But everything is becoming so impersonal. So therefore, in order to counteract this impersonal tendency, we have deities where they can relate with Krishna as a person, develop their love for Krishna. Oh, Krishna, is he hungry today? Little children, Krishna, is he hungry today? Is he hot or cold? Let's put a fan on him. The art of offering everything to them, especially if they're small, is such a nice way to play. Instead of giving them toys, let them play with Krishna in the sense of serving him, when my children were 3 to 5 years old, they had 4-inch Gaur-Nitai deities, and they would take 2 hours, bathing them, putting on clothes and jewelry, and then putting them on the table. We'd offer food and sing. 2 hours were gone. And they would have just created havoc during that time. It was something to be engaged in, and also it was they were so absorbed during that time, and obviously it was, helping them become, cleansed. Their heart was getting cleaner and cleaner. Okay, so here we finished the first section of the thing. We'll go to our next section, books of the basis, very quickly, which is really the heart of the seminar, the books of the basis, which is teaching Srimad Bhagavatam to our children. So if anybody has any questions in the first section, which is purity is the force, building a home environment, please feel free to ask. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
As a teacher of children, especially of the youth group, I've also seen the damage that social media and phones have had in their lives, and parents also come to me and they're quite broken-hearted and they feel like they've lost their children.
Really?
So what is it that we as teachers or parents can do to actually save a child from that who is already going through that?
Good question. Good. And a problem that exists is across the lines, everywhere. I was in the Middle East for several months, I was in Europe, I was in India and Mauritius. This is a universal problem, how to stop these kids from being addicted and ruining, their childhood, right, in a way. Well, the only thing is to take it away, and according to Ted, who's an expert in this, he said, it's hard, but, and you can give these clip phones, the phones that comes without the internet, clip phones, what do you call them? These phones, which it doesn't connect with internet, just for numbers, for calling, because they will always tell you that they need phones, right? They're going to school, they have to call. Well, the numbers is there, you can call. But these smartphones should be avoided. Definitely. Like I said, they've done interviews where young people, they wish they never had it. They wish they never had it. There was one seminar we were giving in St. Louis, Missouri, and this one girl, she said she's been addicted to Facebook, hours and hours on Facebook, to the point that she's lost hours of her time in studies and other things, friendship, actual friendship, and she doesn't know how to give it up. And now she's awakening to that fact, and she says, now I want to give it up. And she says, but my friends, because she got it early in her life, but my friends are discovering it now. So they're all hyped up about it, and I want to give it up. So it's really, really hard. You see? So the only solution to this is not to give it. Otherwise, the children will have to be really educated and controlled in terms of what they can watch and what they cannot. And most of the time, they are aware. They are not there. They can, they will find ways, right? Is it just the time that they are spending on it, or Gangamata? Or?
It varies depending on the children. The different children.
Video games and all that.
No, I'm saying it varies depending on the children we're speaking about, but mostly I'd say it's addiction. They spend a lot of time and they can't seem to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to stop because they're already addicted to it. So something drastic would have to be done to save them from all types of things. There's always a time for these things, when they get older, they're responsible, they're going to college, there is a time for it. By the time children go to college, they're what? At least 20, by 20, they can have them because they're more responsible. Best time is when they get married. Then then you really take it responsibly, right? Hare Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji, for making some very powerful points. I'm past the parenting stage now, but I'm always interested in education, so I'm here. I have a few questions, so let me go through them quickly. Firstly, a little preamble. We do not have a positive option of schooling for devotee children here in South Africa. We don't have a school for children with our spiritual curriculum either. Due to that, parents have no option but to send their children to private or public school, and that is underpinned by secular education principles. And we know the state of public education around the world, and especially in South Africa, is a terrible state. Now, due to peer expectations, and sometimes even competition with the Joneses, parents often indulge their children in materialistic facilities and resources, so the kids won't be so-called left behind. Now, how do we protect our children in this kind of environment? That's question one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, Prabhu, two questions, two answers regarding the options of schooling. It's true. There is an option for homeschooling in South Africa, which is open for those who want to be the brave souls and do it. You can do it, but if you cannot, then yes, public or private school is the only option. And but it can also be done in a way where the public schooling can be done in a way where children don't succumb to all the bad influences in school. In other words, and this is what I'm going to get into in a second section, giving them, we talked about the practical devotional aspect, the morning program, prasadam, good association, all these things. And then avoiding television, all that. That's the practical side, the practical devotional side, and then comes books of the basis. In other words, if you want to keep our children as devotees, even while they're going to school, the key thing is to make them strong in their identity as devotees, where they can overcome all the peer pressure and all the negative influences. It can be done. And I know children who are going to school, and still they're very nice devotees. But then there's some effort that has to be put in by the teachers, by the parents, by the temples, you know.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. I'll ask this question, then I'll give you the mic, okay? Also, children are very enamored, following from that, by the materialistic culture. And ask your child to choose between going with you to the temple or a party with the friends. Now, which will they choose? So how to balance this without making them antagonistic to Krishna consciousness? Because the forces are pulling in different ways now.
Yeah. Well, like, if you give them the higher taste, that's the higher taste that comes in, giving them Krishna. There's so much joy in Krishna consciousness, and Prabhupada was very particular in making sure that the children are given children Krishna consciousness in a joyful manner, not in a manner where, oh, it's a drudgery, oh, it's a punishment. To be Krishna consciousness is like a punishment. No, it should be given in a joyful way where if they have their parties, we have our parties. Okay. Every young person needs parties and fun time, and there should be plenty of Krishna conscious fun time and party time for our children. And it's not difficult. Whatever Prabhupada has given is really all party, festival after festival, and keeping them involved in so many activities, giving them a higher taste. And then gradually they will lose their lower taste when they realized, oh, this is not so bad, because I have friends here who are really, it's a lot of fun, In other words, what do you see in today's society, How young people, they consider themselves a whole species. They don't relate with old people, or adults, I mean. A whole species in themselves. Their own music, their own dress, their own language. Everything, vocabulary, everything. They don't like to relate with adults. There's such a big generation gap. And what is the result of such upbringing? They lack responsibility. They don't want to do anything responsible. Such children just go through life just without any responsibility. They're the parasites in society. They expect everything, without giving anything. Because they're not with responsible adults. And when we keep our children in Krishna consciousness, what happens? There's no generation gap. We do the same things. We wear the same clothes, we have the same music, we have the same food. It was really funny, we were running a Govinda's restaurant, and there were people, this one young American boy, he came, and my children were like 12 or 13 at that time, and he talked to them and he said, oh, you must be going through some teenage crisis now. How does it feel? And they said, oh, nothing. What kind of crisis are you talking about? He says, well, this gap, this rebellion and all that. And they had none. There wasn't any generation gap. Because we were always doing things together. Devotee life is all the same. We don't shove our children into some corner where they don't come to the temple, and there's a separate place for them. There's Sunday school. In other words, our children will always enjoy the same things that we enjoy, right? So this question doesn't even come up. Why should I go to the party or should I go to the temple? It's because we have to inculcate in our children the higher taste, the joys of Krishna consciousness. There's a group in London called the Pandav Sena, and this is a youth group, right? And there are all kinds of really fantastic plays together. They travel worldwide, they do this, and they have their jamming sessions and this and that, and even sannyasis, they travel with them. This is a very young group, very westernized. They were grown up in Britain, but they identify themselves as devotees. Somehow, they're sticking together. So in spite of all that peer pressure, they felt, oh, I have my Sangha. I know who I am. This is the type of Sangha we have to give them. And of course, other things come with it. And how do we develop that Sangha would be also the Shastra part, feeding the intelligence. In other words, feeding the intelligence. Not just culturally, we have to give them. Because, remember how you all grew up in wherever you grew up, Durban, or, what your parents gave you, it was very valuable, right? It was a type of culture that was embedded deep in our lives. We don't realize but how much our teachers and our parents, they give our character. In Gurukulas, when they had started having problems, they realized that all those kids who had constant visitation by their parents, they did so much better. They escaped all that difficulty. And children who were away from their parents, had no connection because they were too far away or something, they did poorly. In other words, we have to connect with our children. We have to really connect deep with them and be part of their life and be part of their entertainment and be part of everything. Of course, they'll have their friends and all that, So, in that way.
Thank you. I'll hand this mic to Geeti Kamachi, and then we'll see if others have questions, and I can fill the gaps after that. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much for this class. My question is about how to introduce a younger child who is
Go
slightly...
closer.
Sorry, can you hear now?
Yeah.
Yes. My question is how to introduce a younger child who is slightly against, not so happy to chant japa in the mornings. How do we look at that?
Yeah. Yes. We didn't cover that in one of the slides. Yes. So japa is not something that should be forced on children. It should not be seen as a punishment or a reward. And imagine, Prabhupada spoke on this too. Very much. He one time he was very angry because small children, they were not given beads because they were disrespecting them in the Gurukula, and the beads were taken because they were putting on the floor or something. He got really angry. He said, "No, why? You have to train them to have beads. They must chant, right?" And then at another time, so in this way he spoke. He said that japa should not be a punishment. In other words, if you don't do this today, if you don't clean your room, you'll have to chant 2 rounds. You have to chant 2 rounds. If you don't clean your room, you have to chant 2 rounds. So what is the message? Japa is a punishment. Or, you've been such a good boy today. You've chanted 5 rounds, here's an ice cream. So in other words, chanting japa, seeing japa as a form of punishment or a reward is detrimental because you're saying there's something better than japa. So when we were giving this seminar in Chowpatty, and our audience was 50% brahmacharis. 50% brahmacharis. And I was wondering why, and it's because they were preaching to grahasthas. And one of their biggest concerns was all the parents were doing so much service, they were so fired up, but the kids, they stayed back at home. And they were not inspired at all to even come to the temple. Parents, such wonderful devotees. But somehow they were failing to inspire their children. Failing to get them to japa, failing them to even get to the temple. So how do we do this? It's by involving our children in everything. So when we do japa, we chant with them. This is the best way to do. We always chant with them so that they see it as a fun activity, and we give them inspiring things. As a devotee, you can get together during Ekadashi, every Ekadashi, as a devotee community, chant together. So there'll be many more children chanting there and chant many rounds together. We in Boise, we used to do Japathon once a year on New Year's Day, and people would try to do many, many rounds, one name of Krishna for every citizen of the state. So many, many rounds. So kids were chanting like 40 rounds on that day. So they start developing a taste. Oh, this was fun. This is the start. Right? And every Ekadashi, if they're coming to chant together, obviously they're going to develop some attachment and taste to it. because they are in a peer group. They are with other children, they are with other parents. It's really nice to think of ways like that, to encourage them to chant and see it's great fun, rather than a punishment or a reward. Don't force them, don't push them to chant.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Any other? Okay. Oh, there's some questions on Zoom?
Yes, this is one question on Zoom.
Okay.
I'll just speak loudly. Hare Krishna, thank you for presenting today, Aruddha Mata. I am a mother of two young boys under 5 who I am homeschooling. I have attended your virtual seminars on the Vaishnava Academy following and read your book. I am very inspired to continue homeschooling because of you and your example. I do have one concern though, concern many family members and friends moving up as well. Socializing my children with other kids. How did you go about doing this when your children were young?
Well, so when I was in Boise, we really didn't have any association, but we created association, and the first thing is that we have this misconception is that unless a child goes to school and spends 8 hours a day with other friends, he's not really socially capable. Okay, but it's really a misconception. You see, today actually it's just the opposite. A child growing up, studying in public school, his social skills are very poor, right? And that's a lot to do with using, these electronic media and these smartphones, the social media that really destroys our social capability. Have you ever seen that, have you had that experience when you're trying to talk to somebody and there's a lull in the conversation? Immediately people will start pulling out their phones. They don't know how to deal with a conversation. In other words, to make a good conversation, they don't even know those skills other than pulling out their phones and tapping. You'll be surprised. If you go down the airport and you look and you see a restaurant, just about everybody is looking at their cell phones, even though they are sitting together to eat. Each one is got, and they don't realize it. In other words, we've lost the skill to actually socialize. Okay? So going to school doesn't mean that we become socially capable just because we need that to hang around with people like that. It does. Children do need to play with their friends and to frolic and to do all those fun things. But that doesn't mean that homeschooling cannot provide that. Right? It cannot provide that. Because, in this concept of a school where 30, 40 children in one classroom with one teacher, this is a fairly new concept that was developed only 50 years ago in America, in India. Before that, there was no such concept. A warehouse type situation where there's tons of kids with one teacher and the teacher trying to manage with so many children. It used to be the tutorial system. One teacher, 10 kids, or less, and of different ages, which means that an older child is interacting with a younger child. There's interaction even among the different ages. So healthy. Now all the children are put into one category with one type of age group. And Prabhupada really said that what can you expect them to learn? A fool is learning from a fool. I'm not saying that they don't need that fun time, play. But this is the idea of social life for them. Children need everything. They need a combination of different types of association. And in particularly, Prabhupada said, adult association should be given precedence to peer association. You know the famous statesman Gandhi, Indira Gandhi, she became a huge statesman. She was not even high school passed. And how did she become a big statesman? Just hanging over the chair of her father, listening to all these diplomats talking, and she learnt everything, just hanging over the chair. I mean, of course, she's not our example, but I'm just saying that, you know, she didn't even go to school. So we have to give them a variety. So my children didn't get that schooling, going to a public school. So how did they get their social life? Well, there were a lot of kids coming on Sundays and they were playing, and they had some special friends that they would go over, some Sri Vaishnava families that were there. And ultimately, of course, they were devotee families. And they were going there and they were coming to their house, you know. And when they went to college early in their life. And because they had this, this healthy combination of adult association, young association, they didn't have a problem in college either. Because they happened to go early, and that comes in the second part. They were only 12 when they entered university. And the kids were, in their classroom, was 6 or 7 years older than them. But why did they not have a problem? Because this was very normal for them to interact with older kids, older people, you know. And they had gained so much maturity through Bhagavatam, you know. But clean maturity. They were still kids at heart, you know. So in other words, Krishna consciousness gives you that kind of maturity, you know, and also we have to change the way we think in terms of social life for our children. Okay. Anything else? Yes. Yes.
Hare Krishna. So I'm asking some of these questions based on my own experience with children. I used to be a teacher at some stage in a school, and then you got friends, kids, and you know, they speak to you. Several mothers and fathers are single parents and have to work and hence have no time to work a spiritual program for their children. What should they do?
Well, there's no substitute for, you know, giving time to our own children. It would be easier if one person did stay at home, you know, if the mother did stay. But I know there's a financial need for many, and that has to be done. Well, the temple becomes a very good resource, you know, for that. If there's programs at the temple, you know, a temple school or places where the child can be in good surroundings and be with safe association, then it can be done. Otherwise, I mean, how can you compensate for this lack of giving enough quality time to our children? It's very difficult.
Yeah. Okay. I may be also, these questions may be reflecting some thoughts of others, but I don't want to be presumptuous about it. The trend in the world is veganism. I base my questions on your sections that you presented. And we see even devotees going out to eat in these places. And the standard has become veganism or vegetarian, you know. So your comment on that and its impact.
Well, there's two types of examples in the society. One is this where devotees feel that it's okay to go to a vegan restaurant and to eat, and what's wrong with that. And the other thing, and there's another school of thought who are very particular in just eating prasadam. So it all depends where we are at in our spiritual life, and gradually as we advance, we can see that it's not about what's wrong, but it's about whether we are ready to accept just prasadam, food that's been offered to Krishna. That's all. The vegans, even though it's vegetarian, but it's not offered to Krishna. That's the key thing. That's the main thing, that as we advance, we realize that this is important for us. But we can try to live at the level that we are in and not try to become artificial. We don't want to become artificial. So if this is what we want to do, and the level that we are at, and we want to do it, then it's okay.
So you made a strong point about the impact of prasadam on consciousness and the impact of non-prasadam on consciousness. I asked that question. Mm-hmm. So, one example is that when a river is in flood, then a huge boulder even gets washed away. Mm-hmm. But when it's in a trickle, small pebble will block it. Mm-hmm. So similarly, like myself, I'm very cautious because I feel my Krishna consciousness like a trickle, and I don't want a pebble to be an obstacle to myself.
Well, the problem with this is that when you start eating and justifying to eating in vegan restaurants and vegetarian restaurants, then it becomes very frequent. It becomes a way out. And there's plenty of them, and it becomes a way out. Okay, today I don't feel like cooking, let me just go there and eat there. So it's something that you really want to do as an emergency, or maybe you're forced to do it because of your job is online or something. You make it like a common habit. That's the problem with this, getting used to food that's cooked by non-devotees. Once you start developing a taste for that and the convenience of that, then I remember the struggles I had to face, because when you don't have any restaurant in the whole city and there's no Govindas, because you are the one who's, you're the only family, not only just having a place where you can just eat and get a break one day, but not only that, but you always have to have enough prasadam so that when people come to your place, to your center, you have to. Can you imagine? I mean, there are times when you say, I wish just I didn't have to cook today, right? It's just so much work. But I remember that those struggles, sometimes they were so big that literally I was just like, get so, so frustrated. But then I realized that when I did go through with it and I did cook, how happy I felt. I remember. Even that tiredness or whatever that was, just knowing that after I cooked and I offered that food, the satisfaction that I felt, and I could feel Krishna's mercy and blessings on that, for that effort that we make. Each time, I can totally sympathize, understand what, especially for women, when 75% of your life just goes in either cooking or cleaning or shopping or eating, it's just a lot. And then on top of that, you're trying to, do things for your children and so many things, right? It's a lot of work. But the point is that when you do it, you just feel like it feels good. You feel so much mercy and so much blessing. It's just so simple just to go and eat something out there, isn't it? And I see that parents, they have all kinds of these biscuits and snacks for their children, tons, And due to that, you see such poor health. We call them junk food. It has to affect the consciousness. It has to affect who we are. And then Prabhupada wanted our children to teach them some tapasya. He said spiritual life means tapasya. If you don't teach them tapasya now, then something that they've accepted as a standard of enjoyment, they cannot give it up later. They cannot give up. And then he would compare them with little children in the older times when they went to the gurukuls and they slept on the floor, hot floor, and they went begging for the guru, rice. And they had not a care in the world. And very soon when you give them these little austerities, they will accept that as their enjoyment. That itself becomes the enjoyment, that simplicity and that austerity. Instead of seeing, when you give it from day one, they don't see it as austerity anymore. A child who's never grown up eating meat, it's not an austerity for them to give up. A child who's never grown up watching television in the home, it's not an austerity for them not to watch. Because they've already inculcated a taste for the mode of goodness. It's austere only when you give them and then you take it away, right? And that takes a little time and effort. Anyway.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for allowing me to ask these questions. Please forgive me if I kind of dominated the questioning. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Your questions were good, Prabhu. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on now. Somebody is there? Okay. Oh.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
What I was wanting to ask is you were talking about being addictive to cell phones when it comes to children. When you take it away from them and they become rebellious, what can you do?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, they like to manipulate you. They like to manipulate. They know that you're going to be scared like anything if they say they're going to kill themselves or something. But are they really going to kill themselves? Very doubtful. Okay? So in other words, we have to see that they're trying to manipulate. And, if you give them a substitute, you have to bargain with them, in a way you have to bargain with them that if you just give up this, there's something better there for you. Try to see some practical things there, some way where they can be driven away from that time. Maybe you can sit and watch a Krishna conscious video movie or something with them that they really like, or spend some time playing a game with them. Maybe join a tennis class or something. More healthy way of lifestyle. So in other words, some higher taste has to be there, and it's going to be difficult in the beginning. It's going to be difficult. Or you can you can have times when they can have it, like an hour in the evening or something, to do their homework. According to experts, they say there's never too late. It's never too late to take it away from them. The risks outweigh the gains. What do you think, Ganga Mata? The risks outweigh the gains, right? Okay.
Krishna Mataji, I'm just thinking the devotees have been sitting for like 2 hours. Maybe we could just take a 5-minute,
Yes.
walk around the temple room,
Yes.
stand up, and
Fine, yes.
and then we can reconvene at 12:10. Is that okay?
Yes. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
The Zoom is on? It's okay. Well,
Hare Krishna. I think we can reconvene now. Thank you.
The philosophy behind it. In other words, religion without philosophy, it becomes fanaticism, right? Philosophy gives us the ability to discriminate between right and wrong. It gives us for example, the story of Parikshit Maharaj, Shringi, the story of how Shringi cursed Parikshit Maharaj to die in 7 days. And he was a young Brahmana boy who had the tejas. He had that Brahmanical power because he was pre-Kali Yuga Brahman, where these people, due to their purity, being born in good Brahman family, they automatically, it was invested in them, this power, this Shakti, by which he could curse. Imagine this little boy is cursing in such a big king, that in 7 days you're going to die from a snake bite, and it's actually going to happen. So these Brahmanas were very pure and they were able to have that Shakti. But Prabhupada writes that it was such a bad curse, it was such a foolish curse, it was given for something not proper, for something so small. What Parikshit Maharaj did was something so small, and it was not even done out of envy. It was just something, he was just hungry and thirsty. And so anybody who becomes hungry and thirsty kind of, goes a little bit crazy. Like, it is something so small, right? But what is he cursing him? To die due to his big false ego. So Prabhupada writes that he was following he is a Brahman. He was following the religion, but without philosophy. And because he had no philosophy behind it, it became sentimental for him, or it becomes fanatical. So religion without good philosophy, it becomes sentimental or fanaticism. Because philosophy gives us the power to understand this is right and this is wrong. This is what I should do, this is what. In other words, yes, Parikshit Maharaj did the wrong thing by putting a dead snake around the rishi's head. But it is a very small mistake. It's something that can happen to anybody. It was not done out of envy, especially a mistake that is done by such a big king such as him. who's as good as the Lord, who's a representative of the Lord himself, he actually can make no mistake. The king can make no mistake. So what happens is when we give everything to our children that we just mentioned, but we give it without philosophy, without shastric evidence, without the power to discriminate, it's very, very different. For example, there's moral issues. What is right, what is wrong. But Bhagavatam is not just about moral issues. It gives more than that. It's about ethical issues. Which means there's two things, seemingly both correct. But there's one that's better than the other. They're both correct. But one is higher than the other. And the power to choose the higher one, that takes Shastra. That takes a literature like Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very powerful literature. It gives that knowledge by which to discriminate. For example, Ramayana, it talks about moral issues. How to be a good king. Do this if you're a good king. Do avoid that. How to be a good brother. How to be a good husband. These are moral issues. It doesn't take much to know what is right, what is wrong. Just a bit of knowledge, right? But what Bhagavatam is, what Mahabharata is ethical issues, two seemingly similar things, but in a way which is way in which you have to make a dharmic decision. This is dharma and this is adharma. But what Bhagavatam is ethical issues, but you have to make two seemingly similar decisions, similar things, but with a decision which is higher because it's pleasing to Krishna. For example, Bali Maharaj, was faced with either pleasing his guru or giving charity to Vamandev. Now, pleasing, the guru is very important in spiritual life, right? If you don't please your guru and you go against him, you can get serious repercussions, right? But Vamandev is Lord himself was more important, so he had to make a very tough decision. So Bhagavatam deals with that, and he went for the second decision, which is giving charity to Vamandev. In a way, he took a decision which is pleasing to Krishna. Same thing with Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. He had the decision between Kula Dharma, not fighting. Why? Because they are his worshipable superiors, his teachers, his grandfather, how much they loved him and did for him. How can I kill him? His Kula Dharma and his Sanatan Dharma. Krishna is saying, no, you fight for me. Do it for me. So which is higher? What did he go for? Ultimately, Sanatan Dharma. So both are correct. So Bhagavatam takes us on a very, very deep level. On a level wherein a child is completely, he understands. He's not going to take anything blindly. He's going to try to find the real deep meaning behind every decision in his life. Okay. So let's read this beautiful quote by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was very much in favor of children reading Bhagavatam, not just adults. It's amazing. There's many, many quotes by him, whereas he wanted Bhagavatam to be taught to all the children. So I'm going to read you these quotes. Our students specifically, they should take care of reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We have therefore prescribed in our school Dallas, and from the very beginning, if they begin education with Bhagavad Gita and then come to Srimad Bhagavatam, and come to Srimad Bhagavatam and read the whole literature, then they will be more than MA PhD. So he's saying that if you read Bhagavatam, you'll be more than MA and PhD. He's telling for the children. Even astronomy, astrology, politics, sociology, atomic theory, everything is there. Therefore, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam very carefully, then you get all knowledge completely. Throughout the whole world, whatever knowledge is there is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. If one simply reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, his education is topmost. If one studies Srimad Bhagavatam, he is well versed in every subject matter. So, very, very powerful statements here. So in other words, it covers, Prabhupada is saying, it covers every subject matter in the world. And he's even named a few. So in other words, if you give them the foundation of Bhagavatam, when they do go out and do mundane subject matters, then they will have no problem. They will already get the Vedic perspective for these subjects. So no amount of mundane education is going to make them affect their lives. You know, everything is now atheistic, impersonalistic, materialistic. You go to any science class, any class, you know, sociology class, psychology class, it's all impersonal, it's atheistic. So how do you counteract this? How do you get the proper perspective? How do you prevent your children from becoming non-believers, losing them to Krishna consciousness? Is by giving them the Vedic perspective first. At least if you haven't given them first, at least alongside with it. Okay? So everything is there. You know, how to do politics, you know, before they get into modern politics, you know, or anything like that. It's all the kings, all that is politics, you know, the Raj Rishis, the type of politics they did. A lot of the Mahabharata is also there. According to Dharma, what is proper politics and what is improper politics. You know, Swambhu Manu and his reign, such an amazing description of his reign in the Bhagavatam. It gives all the in and outs of what it means to rule, to become a ruler, versus the rulers of today, the self-serving rulers of today, right? So the child, if anything, has a perspective, a bigger perspective, a more deeper perspective. He's not stuck with the idea that you have to live with these people, these self-serving rulers of today, right? He knows there's an option. Powerful. So in this way, for example, if somebody wants to become a lawyer, they require, in America, they require a degree in philosophy. They prefer a degree in philosophy for somebody who's learning to become a lawyer. Why? Because it's not because of the content, but because of the skills that is needed in reaching philosophical solutions. So imagine somebody doing Srimad Bhagavatam. He's going to be an expert lawyer. Because that's, you know, the arguments and the analysis that it requires. Every story requires an analytical thinking, good reasoning skills. And if they get that, then obviously they are expert in mediation, in becoming a lawyer, in many, many things. Now, some of the main benefits are the spiritual benefits. We're going to be talking about spiritual benefits from reading Srimad Bhagavatam and academic benefits. So spiritual benefits, direct association with these great personalities mentioned in the Bhagavatam. As they read their stories, they imbibe the character of these personalities, and then gradually they appreciate this insight. They are good role models for them. Now just some examples. The story of Parikshit Maharaj that we were just talking. Imagine, such a great king. How was he able to just give up his kingdom? He was able to give up his kingdom within a minute. He was respectful to the wishes of time. It was a time which was not favorable to him. He accepted that. He knew that time is not in his favor. Because Krishna had other plans. Krishna had plans that this Bhagavatam should be spoken. Kali Yuga should advance and Bhagavatam should be spoken. That was his plan. Kali Yuga had to begin. So he wanted to be respectful to eternal time and Krishna's plans with eternal time. Huh? Even though he's such a powerful king and he has so much power, everybody needed him as a king. But yet, he was so humble, so tolerant. For himself, he did not care. Even though the curse was unjust for him, such a big injustice was given to him, right? He did not care. A pure devotee doesn't care about the justices and injustices of this world. His business is whatever makes Krishna happy. So here we see such a powerful king, so humble, so tolerant, and a powerful king also. So so these qualities, when children read these qualities, so it's just not a story about him being cursed. There's a lot of things under play. It's teaching our children how to be like Parikshit Maharaj. Actually, Prabhupada said in one quote, he quoted Jiva Goswami that every child can be a Parikshit. That's exactly what he said. Maybe he won't see Krishna within the womb of his mother, but he can be a Parikshit. Why? Because of the association. Just by hearing about Parikshit and his qualities, he can become a Parikshit. That's how powerful the hearing process is, and studying Srimad Bhagavatam is. Same thing he said with Dhruva. Every child can become a Dhruva. So, Parikshit Maharaj is teaching our children qualities such as humility, tolerance, accepting curses as the mercy of the Lord, not retaliating, even though he had the power to retaliate, and also being tolerant, being a good leader. He was unafraid of dealing with Kali. He was ready to kill Kali. So one would consider somebody humble or meek being like a wimp. Oh, what can he do? He's so humble, right? That's how we think about humility. But actually, it gives us strength. Only a very powerful person can be humble. Spiritually powerful person. So he's a very powerful king who's able to punish Kali. So in this way, we learn good character. The character of gratefulness in the story of Dhruva Maharaj. We try to tell our children, you should be grateful for what I've done for you, right? As parents, we do so much for them and we say, please be grateful, But do you think that it matters to them? Whether they even know what gratefulness means, really, or they care about it? Because they are taking shelter of you, you're more attached to them than they are to you. Because you're providing that shelter. The person who provides shelter is more attached than the person who takes shelter. See? But it doesn't resonate with them. You do a story like Dhruva Maharaj, wherein they're learning how Dhruva was grateful to his mother. Well, that goes really deep in his heart, right? Because even after 36,000 years, what did he do? He remembered his poor mother. When he's going on the Viman, his time comes to go back to Godhead. He's already served as king for 36,000 years, and he doesn't want to step on the Viman. Why? Because he's thinking of his mother as his Pad Pataksha Guru and saying, well, I have to take my mother. And he says, well, look up, Nanda say. And he looks up and the plane is already flying ahead of him with his mother in the plane, right? So Prabhupada glorifies this quality of gratefulness in Dhruva. So you try to teach your children gratefulness, it just goes, it doesn't have much of an effect on your own. But if you teach them through these stories of Srimad Bhagavatam, because these are absolute figures and powerful figures, it goes very deep. And they actually imbibe these characters. I'll tell you a story about my grandchild. I was teaching him Bhagavatam, sometimes physically when I was there or sometimes on Skype. And we were doing this section of the Dhruva, wherein the Viman comes and takes Dhruva back to God. And its description is very beautiful about the plane and also Nanda and Sunanda, and he becomes attracted. He's 4.5 years old, and he says, I want to go on that plane. Dadi, I want to sit on that plane. And I said, okay, one day you become a pure devotee and this plane will come for you. He said, no, but I want to sit now. He's only 4.5. And I'm thinking what to say. And then I told him, I said, okay, if you want to go, then you can go, but your parents cannot go with you. Is that okay? And he started thinking, he says, you know what, I'll wait because I don't want to make the same mistake as a Jamal did. And the story of a Jamal we had read many, many months ago. It wasn't recent. But he put the two stories together. He put the two stories together. And you know the story of a Jamal? Everybody knows? Yes? Everybody knows? Yeah. Well, when he's a great devotee who's raised as a real good training, Brahmanical training, but he falls in for a prostitute that he watches on his way to the forest. He's going there to bring the puja things. And he sees this prostitute kissing a man, and he becomes attracted to this prostitute, brings her home, gives up his chaste wife, and lives with her for many, many years, doing all kinds of abominable things, stealing and all that, to keep her happy. And then when he was 88, he's on his deathbed, dying, as you know, and the Yamadutas come to get him because he's been a sinful man, pluck his soul from his body. And he starts chanting Narayan. He starts calling his son, not Narayan, but his son who was named Narayan. But he's calling the name of Narayan. And he comes, and Vishnu Dutas come and stop the Yamadutas from taking a Jamal home to hell, rather, right? He says, no, you can't take him. He just chanted the holy name. And they had a beautiful conversation wherein he described why a Jamal is freed from all sinful reactions because he chanted the holy name without offenses. So therefore he has to be given, not go back to Godhead, he wasn't ready, but be given a second chance. So he's given a second chance. And he gets a second chance, and he's watching all this. And he realizes he got his second chance. He's so grateful. Krishna saved him. And then he wakes up and he wants to reform his life. He leaves home. But before he leaves home, he's feeling very sad, very lamenting. Why? Because he left his poor old parents and his chaste wife. And he says that he neglected his old parents in his old age. And he's feeling very bad. So this child remembers that and saying, I can't do that same mistake. If I go now, who's going to take care of my old parents? Very deep thinking, right? And this is the nature of Bhagavatam. This is the character they are getting. These qualities go very deep in them. And it's story after story after story. And I'll tell you, I have many examples of other children who reacted the same way. Not with this story, but with other stories. Comparing two different things and being very deep. It's not just my grandson, it's many, many children. Because the capacity to grow, to understand, to reason grows deeper and deeper as they do Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam can be taught in layers. It's not like you can give everything in one go. That's why it's always fresh. You read now, it is valuable at different times in a person's life. Some verses speak louder to you. Why? You're a Grahastha. So the verses that concerning Grahastha life speaks louder to you than a Brahmachari life, right? It has fresher meanings. So each time you read, it has fresh meanings, newer and newer meanings. That's the nature of Bhagavatam. So a child will learn what he has to learn now. Will take only so much, but then a year later he's going to take something else. And then a year later he's going to take something else. And pretty soon you have a child who's got all these wonderful qualities. Arjuna, he took the lesson from Krishna that he should fight Sanatan Dharma, please Krishna. Those same instructions, he uses it for renouncing everything when the time comes. When the time comes, he remembers the Gita and he renounces life and he goes away to the Himalayas. Those same instructions are speaking to that person in different ways, at different times in a person's life, whenever he needs it most, and it provides those answers. So it's giving us these answers that we need It's not about moral stories, but it's about complex. It matches with the complexities of our life and goes even further. As our lives become complex, it matches that and gives us those answers. Okay? So many powerful stories giving character training to the children. You can think of many stories, right? Every story is all about good character. Stories of Yudhishthira Maharaj, the Pandavas, academic benefits from reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So we know the goal of reading Srimad Bhagavatam is to become a pure devotee, go back to Godhead, but not to say that anything else is lacking. These are things, byproducts, that will come, which will be very valuable in the children any time in their life. For example, today I mentioned employers, educational institutions are looking for people who have these skills. They're not looking for people just with good merit. Not only that they can answer deep questions, critical questions, but also if they can make good questions. Whether they can provide solutions, synthesize things. And so any job that's out there, good coveted jobs, require these skills now. So it will be valuable in no matter which area they are in. Because every story elicits inquiry. The methodology, what's happening? Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Like in terms of reasoning skills, it's very powerful. For example, we have to understand, like the story of Prahlad Maharaj and Hiranyakashipu is very powerful. Prabhupada read this story for 3 months in Vrindavan. He was reading because he found it very relevant in today's society, the story of Prahlad Maharaj. Why? Because it's dealing with a self-serving personality like Hiranyakashipu, who's just thinking about himself, who's very envious of the Lord, who's destroying nature, ecology, and he's also torturing his son, and how Prahlad deals with such a father. So in other words, how do we live in a world? Prabhupada said there was only one Hiranyakashipu, there's many now. So how do we live in a world of such leaders, self-serving leaders? How do we live in it? Well, Prahlad is the hero of the story. He gives us the path of how to live in this world. That we can live even in a society like that and be happy by having this implicit faith in Krishna and His holy name. Right? So Prahlad is the hero of the story. He's the biggest devotee in the history of the world, and Hiranyakashipu is the biggest terrorist in the history of the world. And here we see these opposites. And Hiranyakashipu is behaving in such a bad manner due to his envy of the Lord. And it's teaching us that when one is envious of the Lord, then one becomes envious of everything that's pleasing to Krishna. So he's destroying all the brahmanas, the yagyas, anything that was pleasing to Krishna. He was destroying all the fruit trees. Why would anybody destroy things of his own kingdom? Mines? It's because of his envy. Today when we see things, well, we understand. When people don't get enough food to eat, even though there's so much out there, it's familiar, right? Hiranyakashipu did the same thing. He destroyed all the nice fruit trees, things that one can just eat, pluck and eat. There's nowhere to be seen. Can you see any fruit trees around? That if you're hungry, you can pluck it. It's a Kali Yuga mentality, right? So Hiranyakashipu was symbolizing that Kali Yuga type of mentality. Destroying, killing the cows, destroying nature, when the cows don't interact with Mother Nature, giving her own manure, the wealth that comes through artificial fertilizer is wealth that is exploitative. It doesn't last too long. It has to finish. But wealth that comes in from pleasing Krishna and pleasing Mother Earth, when cows and Mother Earth interact, that wealth is permanent. And that's why Hiranyakashipu's regime did not last too long. Right? It did not last too long. He died, and with him everything else. And Prahlad became king. So wealth that's accumulated from exploitation and displeasing Krishna is destructive. Has to go away. Will be finished. Right? So many things we learn in that story. And what we should not be, as represented by Hiranyakashipu, and what we should be as represented by Prahlad. So we learn so much from this one story, how to be like Prahlad. In other words, it gives us as children the facility, the strength to live in this world. If you don't give them the knowledge from the Bhagavatam, it becomes really scary to live in this material world. It's just the opposite. People think reading scriptures means, you just become a spiritualist and you cannot fit into this world. How do you fit in this world? This is reality. What's happening here? And then you're isolated from this world if you're reading scriptures. It's not true. It actually makes you very much, it adapts you, it helps you to live in this world, and that too in a happy way, in a way that's pleasing to Krishna, which is the formula for becoming happy. A child who's growing up with alternatives in life. If things are bad and things are going downhill, if people don't have alternatives, you can imagine what it feels like. Right? The way things are going in society, people are feeling helpless. With nature and so many things, the global warming and all that. One feels like what's going to happen. But if you know that there's an alternative, so Krishna consciousness, reading Shastras gives us hope, gives us a way to live in this world in a way that we can be happy. It does not isolate you, it insulates you. It protects you. You can be happy in a place like that, in the material world as well. Because that's why a pure devotee doesn't care whether he's in the spiritual world or in the material world. Because he's found a way to be happy in the material world. But are we happy? Yeah, the times when we are doing Krishna consciousness, we are happy. The times we are not doing Krishna consciousness, we are unhappy. We are suffering, isn't it? Our grahastha life is happy to the extent we are Krishna conscious. And we're not happy to the extent when we are not Krishna conscious. So as devotees, we learn the process of how to become happy. And this is what Srimad Bhagavatam gives us. Besides giving us the skills that is needed to live in this world, to become expert in argument, in reasoning, in vocabulary. Okay, so we'll go to the methodology, how to teach. So this is a very practical thing, how to teach children. Parents, if they can read a few purports ahead of time, or teachers, and we take turns discussing the books. And when we discuss, then, like I said, discussion is a Vedic tradition, very, very important for sharpening the intelligence. What kind of intelligence there is, when there's a monologue, when somebody has to listen and the speaker speaks, until there's interaction, right? The whole Bhagavatam was an interaction. So that helps. So taking turns reading the translations, discussion, opening it for discussions. One thing leads to another thing. Goes on and on. And very soon you will be surprised. You've discussed so many things. And it helps to keep good relationship and communication with your children, because somehow Bhagavatam elicits in the children inquiry, and the children speak out. Even their personal problems, they will speak out. Why? Because it is set in the context of a story of these powerful personalities, where children feel safe in speaking out. We were reading Bhagavatam and we were very much, we were very close to each other. The children were feeling very, very free they were feeling very happy to be able to interact, to share. There was no reservation. And I would discuss my own problems that I was facing within the temple and things like that. So they learn to see, okay, my parents, they're not perfect, but they are trying to be perfect. We're human. Very, very healthy ways we can understand. So I'll tell you that what effect it has, this type of methodology, is, for example, when I was teaching eight to 15-year-olds, we were reading this section of the Bhagavatam called the Jaya Vijaya story. Actually, it was from 6 to 8 we were reading. The age group was 6 to 8, and I also did it with the older kids. But the questions, it was really interesting. I don't know if you know this story about Jaya and Vijaya being cursed by the 4 sages for the 4 Kumaras. Has anybody read that part of the Bhagavatam? The Jaya and Vijaya being cursed by the 4 sages. So many things are happening there. And we ended up, in 2 teams. One was saying that the sages were right, and the other was saying the bodyguards, the gatekeepers, Jaya and Vijaya, were right. And who was right? Because Jaya and Vijaya, they were simply doing the duty of stopping them. After all, they had to protect people who were not quite qualified to come into the Vaikuntha. They had that job. So they stopped. They couldn't figure out, these 4 little children, whether they were qualified. The 4 sages, well, they had such an eagerness to go and see the Lord. I have to see the Lord. And they were pure souls. Why were they stopped? They had such an eagerness to see the Lord. Why were they stopped? They were right. And then, on top of that, they cursed when they were not allowed. Was that curse okay? Was something, and the curse was horrible. Was 3 lifetimes as demons. It was a heavy curse for the mistake that they made of stopping them. Too heavy. And was that right? Getting angry? And when Jaya and Vijaya, when they did get that curse, did they take it well? Did they counter curse? They could have. They were very powerful. They were confidential servants. They were in the innermost door, the closest one can get to Narayan. But how did they do? They accepted that curse so well. And they prayed to the 4 sages, please bless me that I never forget Krishna. Don't protect my faith. I don't care where I go. Even if I go as demons in the material world. But protect my faith in Krishna. Let me always remember him. And then Krishna comes as a transcendental mediator. And he's saying, oh my gosh, my 2 devotees, they're fighting and they're cursing each other. I have to do something. And Krishna, he comes barefoot. Lord Narayan always wears shoes wherever he goes. But here Lord Narayan is running outside in barefoot without any shoes. Why? Because he puts tulsi on his feet. Because he wants the sages to be pacified quickly. They had come to see the Lord. So if they smell the tulsi, they will be pacified. And it's true, when they smelled the tulsi, their hearts were so pacified. They forgot all about the anger. And when the Lord spoke, it was just like nectar. And they got really confused because the Lord was glorifying devotees. And they got confused. It seems like the Lord is supporting us, but it also feels like we were at fault because we should not have punished His dear devotees. Any pure devotee who makes a mistake is still a sadhu because he made a mistake accidentally. So they should be considered a sadhu, and we punished them. And they ended up asking the Lord, Lord, please give us a punishment. We deserve punishment. That was the climax of the story. Them finally realizing that I made the mistake. And Krishna said, don't worry, this is all orchestrated by me because I had a desire to fight. So I made this whole thing happen. It's fine, everything's okay. So you see, so many things are happening here between back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Were the sages right? Were the gatekeepers right? Krishna, he's coming in. The curses, how to take a curse. Is all types of anger bad? Or what we should do when devotees curse us? Should we curse back? How should we take it? They are actually blessings, curses by devotees. You see, in this one story, so many things we discussed, right? So many things. And so when a child goes through that, his mind becomes like, wow, I'm just going to, burst. They're just full with it, right? So many things are there. And also Bhagavatam deals a lot with analogies, allegories, so many things which help us to understand abstract thinking, to understand difficult spiritual concepts in an easy way, by material examples. How do you understand the difference between body and soul? Through a material example, between the car and the driver. So these analogies is a very important part of logic that they teach in colleges. They teach logic, and a chapter in the logic is analogy. This is what they teach in Bhagavatam. Pretty high stuff, pretty deep stuff, right? All that, but they end up going into college. You send to college, to do degrees in public speaking and debate, communications, interpersonal relationships. It's all about, psychology. The story of Dhruv Maharaj, Suruchi cursing and being so harsh, her psychology versus Suniti's psychology. All these psychologies are being taught in the Bhagavatam. Everything. So you see, the basis is Bhagavatam. When you teach them, they've suddenly learned through these stories psychology, everything. And you go further into the 5th canto, you've learned anthropology, you've learned science also, origin of the universe, you've learned the planetary systems, all these things. You've already learned it from something so transcendental that when you end up learning all this from this mundane books, then it's just a thing that I must go through. And I must learn all that just so I can help people. I can please Krishna by giving Krishna consciousness to others in ways that I can, you see. So the 4 to 5-year-old, 7-year-olds was my grandchild and other children of that age, how much they understand. Don't think that this age they're not ready for Srimad Bhagavatam. They are ready for Srimad Bhagavatam, very much so. They can understand a lot. One kid was doing comparisons between Vaman Dev when he stretched his first step, how everything came under him, with Mother Yashoda who saw everything in Krishna's mouth, making comparisons like that, just out of the blue. You see, you can even teach it to toddlers, to young children. How do you teach that? Through pictures, making it real fun and creative. There's a Bhagavatam group in London. They call it the Baby Bhagavatam group, and they take children from 3 to 5 years old and they do a chapter a week, systematically, chapter by chapter, using those books over there, teaching them, every chapter, but in a fun, creative way. I'm sorry, somebody was trying to write down something for the previous one? Yeah. So Bhagavatam can come very, and remember it's taught in layers. So as you give, the capacity to absorb becomes deeper and deeper. The brain technically can never become tired. It can take more and more and more. The more you give, the more it assimilates, right? So, and it's also fun, and it's challenging. And this becomes especially valuable when the children become teenagers, because they're trying to figure out everything. They're trying to make sense of the world. They're trying to make sense of the world. They need answers. So many children now who are teenagers, they're drifting away because they have not been given this Shastric knowledge. It's not enough to just give them the cultural aspect. That is important. But what's more important is to give them the philosophy behind it, why they are devotees. Prabhupada wanted Srimad Bhagavatam to be incorporated in every Gurukula from his books. This was the desire of Srila Prabhupada. Bhurijan Prabhu, who taught Gurukula for many, many years, he began this by starting to write different sections of the Bhagavatam, but he never completed it. And when we put together these books, he was so pleased, because he was so, he knew that it would be very pleasing to Krishna. So I really, really encourage you to get these books and start using them in your Sunday school or even privately, to teach them, because they're given these, it's a systematic study, chapter by chapter, but in a way that really brings out the philosophy in a fun way. So another example is the Dhruva story. It's a really nice story to begin with. Of course, you can begin from chapter 1, like the books are giving, But if you need to, do it with the story just to get that attraction, Dhruva is a great story. It goes so deep. And Lord Chaitanya heard it hundreds and hundreds of times. Why? Because of the lessons learned from this story. Every time there's a new lesson. Even to this day, I've read it so many times, I find newer and newer lessons each time I read it. I discover something new. It's not, it's just, how Dhruva, he approaches his father to sit on his lap, right? Yeah. And Suruchi is so harsh with him and said, you cannot sit on his lap or become king of the world because you're not born from my womb. And in order to sit on the lap, you actually have to go and please the Lord. You have to go and please him. But what really broke Dhruva's heart was the fact that his father didn't pick him up. His father did not support him. Right? And then he goes to his mother, and imagine the mother is already the neglected queen of the king, who's been set aside by the king. And she's seeing what's done to his son, the pain that she goes through. It's unimaginable. And yet, how does she direct him? She's so faithful to Krishna. She says, guess what, my son? What your stepmother told you is exactly correct. She's so faithful to Krishna that she supports the words of her co-wife. She said, do you know what? She's right. I cannot do anything for you, but the person who can do for you is the Lord. He's like millions of mothers. If you go to him and you please him, whatever is in your heart will be fulfilled. But one thing that you have to avoid being is being envious of Uttama or his mother. Because envy will get you nowhere. By being envious, you're going to be hurting yourself. Within that few minutes, the advice she gives him changes the course of his life. I mean, it was so easy for her to blast her co-wife, right? Look at her, what she did. You need to do something when you grow up, or blah, 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 you know. So we see the character of Suniti, you know. What a great exalted woman she is. And then she says, I have heard that where can you please Krishna? I've heard that he lives in the forest. She's willing to let him go to the forest for the sake of becoming such a good devotee. And he goes there. And when he goes to Narad Muni, he's tested again over there. Narad Muni, he's testing him and saying, you should go back, you're just a child. Something that you're attempting is impossible. Even yogis cannot be fair. He says, no. You have to give me a better instruction. I'm too much in the Kshatriya spirit. And then he says, you shouldn't, this honor and dishonor business, you should be above that. And that he can understand. But he says, I am not strong enough to take that. I am determined to find Krishna. So what really protects him is not his Kshatriya spirit. It helped him. But what really protects him is the strength from his mother, the direction that she gives him. That's what her real protection and her shelter was. This protection from his mother. You see how much of an effect we can have on our children? That's what saves Dhruva's. That's why he's so grateful in the end. The direction that she gives him saves his life. Just the right instructions. Don't be envious. Don't hate anybody. She's given the right instructions. Go find Krishna. And how is she rewarded? By going back to Godhead. And her condition is, she's been neglected by the husband. Totally neglected. She became so glorious. So glorious. It's ultimately why? Because it's chastity to Krishna that makes a person glorious. And she and both her son and the mother both had that integrity. Very, very powerful story. And you read, you get more and more lessons. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and all you have to do is read the purpose and you'll get it. You won't get everything at all in turns, and you don't have to, right? The character of the king, how he ignored because his weakness. As a king, he did not follow religious principles, right? But how come he was saved in the end, but Suruchi wasn't, right? Suruchi died in a forest fire. Her son also died, all as a reaction for offending a pure devotee, that she didn't recognize him to be a pure devotee as a child, right? So again, children are very special. And then she, so how come the king was saved from the heavy reaction? Because he atoned for his sin. And we'd spent a lot of time with the children talking about that. This atonement business. This business of saying sorry. Really feeling deep in your heart that you're actually very sorry for something that you did. Not just go and say, I'm sorry. That's the end of the sorry business, right? How to empathize with something that you've done wrong. How to say, actually feel that, and how to apologize to a devotee. So many things that child can learn through this one story. Right? And because of his atonement, day and night regretting what he did to his son, leaving the kingdom, day and night thinking about his son and what he did, where is he? It purified him, and he was saved. But Suruchi was not saved. She still had to go through a reaction, right? Heavy reaction. So yes, Suniti is showing the quality of, how she's taking something so unfortunate in her life. She's taking that and making it so fortunate in her life. Something so unfortunate, but she's making something so wonderful out of it. All because of her, integrity and her perspective, the right way. She was a simple woman, didn't know much, but she just knew the right things, right? Anyway, so you can see some of the lessons we learn. Don't be envious of other. If you desire something, ask Krishna, be determined and focused. It's not just about determination, the story. It's more about character, good character, chastity to Krishna. And of course, how devotional service, we can change the whole world. One pure devotee, how he can change the whole world. It's a very, very powerful stories. So, any questions on this part so far? The preaching is the essence. The third part takes very little time. So we're almost to the end. So one thing that I did not cover, which is very interesting that I forgot, let's get to that. You probably have some questions on that, is how to deal with adult topics in Srimad Bhagavatam. So these are a lot of questions that I get in different seminars, so I'm just bringing it to you. Many, many times people have a question how to teach, because I am a believer in doing every part, everything in the Bhagavatam, not skipping anything. Okay? Teaching everything. Now, I homeschooled my kids for 6 years, and we were able to finish all 12 cantos. So we had a chance. But then they're going to read it again. They're still children, right? They're going to read it again, and they're going to read it again. Because we were doing it as part of our as part of our 5 subjects: language, vocabulary, spelling, writing, critical thinking, comprehension. Everything was being covered. All the humanities was being covered in Srimad Bhagavatam. You don't have to do that, because I know your children are already going to school. But you can do it like a side thing. Like a side thing means just to keep them as good devotees, not to lose them in Krishna consciousness. Do it for that. And the other byproducts will be there. Good thinking, good critical thinking, good jobs, everything will come. Because it's going to give those tools, those skills. Naturally it's going to give you skills. The main thing that we will do is keep them as devotees. Give them the faith. Why they're devotees and why it's good for them, why it's better than anything else. And if you can find time every day of the week, even for 20 minutes, do it. It's a nice way for families to sit together in the evening. Everything automatically winds up. When you have some, agenda, which is you consider very important, everything less important just fizzles out. If there is a will, there's a way, right? I had such a desire to read Srimad Bhagavatam all my life, and I had no time. We were running a preaching center. There was so much work. This is not the only thing we did. The different deity worship, Artik, and so many things, and preaching programs. Our life was so full. There was no time to read. No time to read. And so I thought, what should I do? And then I thought, well, if I teach my children, if I read with them, then I'll get to read. This is how I finished my Bhagavatam, with them. They were growing spiritually, I was growing spiritually. I was a new devotee, I told you. And imagine the depth that I'm speaking, I may have some depth now, is because over the years I gathered some. But when I was a new devotee, what was I teaching them? The way I understood it. Through puppets and whatever I could understand. That was enough to get them. They did homeschooling for 6 years, and within 6 years they had mastered every language, every subject. By the time they went there, they did everything for the first time in their life. Every subject they did for the first time in their life. And they had no problem at all. You know, whether it was Western literature, whether it was English composition, whether it was history, Western history, whether it's geography, whether it was psychology, sociology, anthropology, they had to finish all the core subjects in order to get a degree. So we have to go to school, and so much time is wasted in studying these subjects, right? You know, for years, they start at like the age of 5 or 6. They have big, in India they have this thick school bags. And the poor child is just like, is so overweight, you know, he's bending down with all these books that they introduce so early in their life. And they don't remember a thing. You don't remember a thing when you go to college. By the time you go to high school or something, you just forget everything. But yet they're being blasted. So what you do is you save all that time by teaching them the real thing, the first 10, 12 years of their life. So by the time they're ready, when they go, then they need to study mundane subjects because they need to finish their 10th exams. You know, that's when things start moving, right? 10th, 11th, 12th, high school, like that. You've already like given them the strong foundation. And that's why in America it's very popular, private schooling. You know, even many children, many parents, even if they don't give their children homeschooling, at least for high school, they pull them out. It's the worst time in America for children. Too much peer pressure, too many drugs, too many temptations. There was one Karmi, young American boy, he said, you know, if there's anything in my life that I would change, is skipping those 4 years of high school. He was a very good boy. He was also shaken up. So many Karmi parents, they do that. They pull them out those 4 years, and they do privately. Everywhere there's private, you know, provision for private schooling now. So many ways to go, you know. But if you cannot do anything, and you have to send them to school, it's okay. Don't give up. It's okay. What you just have to do is give them this ammunition, the shield, to face the world, to live in it in a way that they can be strong. That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. Your good association, your good example, association of devotees here, visits to temple. My husband had a very strict rule. Come Sunday, everything stops. Must go to the temple. No matter, it doesn't matter how much homework. One time there was so much things happening, and there was Janmashtami and so much to do and everything, and my son, he had a huge paper in college. You know, they went to college early, he was like 12 or 13, and he had this huge paper, he didn't know what to do now. And my husband said, no, this needs to be done. There's so many, hundreds of guests coming, we have to do something. And lo and behold, next day, when the paper came, it was one of those sample questions that somebody had sent him from long time ago, many years ago. They repeated it. So Krishna helps. We have to have the faith. When we do the right thing for our children, Krishna will help. Krishna is not, he's there. He's not, he's kind, he's caring, especially to his devotees. So we have to have the faith. We have to be strong. When it comes to our spiritual life, for our children, we should not be lazy and think it can come later. Later means very late, too late.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for that first session. The devotees are ready to serve prasadam now, and we have to keep to the schedule that we advertise, Mataji. So I hate to disrupt the lesson, but prasadam is being served now, so we'll break away for prasadam, and the devotees can please join us back again promptly at 2 o'clock in the temple room.
Yes.
So prasadam will be served in the white marquee at the bottom. Those that don't know, they can just maybe follow the devotees, and then they'll guide you through there as well.
So we'll come back for the third session, and maybe one of the slides of the second session, which is preaching is the essence, which is all about extracurricular activities for children, how to make them strong in their faith to Krishna consciousness, how to reach out, go over there, everywhere, and give Krishna consciousness to others, and that is for children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Grace Aruddha Mataji ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
And if anybody wants to remove God in the picture, they come up with these theories that things happen on its own. You know, the Big Bang theory is all matter was condensed to a point and it exploded into atoms, and atoms became stars, galaxy, planets, and suddenly life. This is the theory. And now the Big Bang is being refuted by other modern scientists. So in this way, and Prabhupada, he in purpose, many purpose, he just bangs it away. He really refutes these theories tooth and nail. His arguments are so sound, and this is what he instructed his scientific devotees to do, is to refute these things. That it's not possible, that life came from just by explosion, unless there's life involved in it, which is a superior energy of Krishna. Unless they are activating it, they act as a catalyst, there can be no explosion, so like he gives the example of how if you have to blow up mountains, somebody has to go and put dynamite there for the mountains to blow up, right? It cannot blow up on its own. So there's always a person involved in it. The chemist in the laboratory, he puts acids and alkanides together and there's an explosion. It's not like it's happening on its own. The blender doesn't work on its own. Somebody goes and switches it on. So he keeps hammering that point, that matter cannot work on its own. Life cannot come from matter, but matter comes from life. Life comes from life. So in this way, he really, there's a lot of information about that in the Bhagavatam. And so when children read these information and these arguments, they start thinking, they may go to school and learn these theories, but they won't take it lying down. They know behind everything is God. He says, Prabhupada says that the explosion happened is when Mahavishnu glanced. Then living entities started exploding in the Mahatattva. This is the explosion. Mahavishnu, he's the life. He's the soul behind all souls. So when he glances, then explosion starts. He says, where is the proof? Where is the proof that chemicals are coming from, life is coming from chemicals? Where is the proof? Any chemicals that we find in our body is there because we are living. We are alive, so there's chemicals in my body. So many chemicals in our body because we are alive. Chemical, citric acid is coming from a lemon tree. It's live. It's a tree. So one cannot create life by simply reactions in chemicals. So everything, you read, when you start reading this chapter by chapter and all these, and Bhagavatam, you'll get all this, the children get, and so nicely, in such a simple way, Prabhupada presents everything in his morning walk conversations, in the purports, Srila Prabhupada. He's explaining all that, and of course the biggest thing is the Darwin theory, man came from monkey, and this Prabhupada really hammers, right? He says lower intelligence cannot come from, higher intelligence cannot come from lower intelligence. There's no man coming from monkeys. There's no proof in that, right? The demigods are creating living at a higher beings are creating the lowest species of life. And there can be no sudden species coming from due to evolution of species. Where can we see that suddenly, he gives this wonderful example that no matter how hard you try, no matter how so many times genes can be miscopied. But will you ever find a baby born with hoofs instead of hands or legs? Never. He says God's creation is perfect. You can't, the laws of nature are unavoidable. I mean, they're perfect. God's creation is perfect. Maybe there could be a red rose bush can have a white rose instead of a red rose. There can be some genes that are miscopied. But you'll never find lotus flowers in a rose bush. Right? This is what they say. This evolution of species finally made humans out of monkeys. Due to miscopying the genes, over time, a new species was created. But what Vedic version says, all species came simultaneously. According to our karma, we get a certain type of body, and we evolve into that species due to a consciousness. It's evolution of consciousness which goes on, right? And then eventually, and they're all created simultaneously, depending on where we need to go, which body we need to go. The bodies are not evolving from one to the other. Our consciousness is evolving, right? And all these species are coming simultaneously, according to what we deserve. It's not like, suddenly there's a new species from something foolish like an animal. Some higher species like a human who can think and philosophize, coming from an animal like monkey. It's not possible. So anyway, so he keeps on, and all this is based on the fact that they want to deny God. Every theory wants to rule out God and minus him from the picture. It's the mechanistic way of looking at things. And we have to come back to the theistic view. We have to give our children the faith in God, behind that God is in everything. God is the soul of all souls. Without God, there is no existence for us also, for the soul. So He is that big catalyst that moves things in the world. They can become big astronauts. They can become big aeronautical engineers and whatnot, right? That is not the problem. The problem is, how are they going to see things? What is their vision going to be? And what are they going to do in the world? What kind of mark are they going to make for themselves in the world as devotees of Krishna? What is their contribution to Srila Prabhupada? Prabhupada said every one of us, our children should become revolutionaries. Everybody goes through the same old thing. Getting married, having children, doing the routine stuff. What's so special about that? What are we going to do for Srila Prabhupada? That is the question. It doesn't mean that we leave our jobs, we leave all this, interacting with the world. No. It means, where is our consciousness? It really is all about how we see things and think, and how we observe things, and what is our consciousness. That is really the key. The consciousness has to be in the right place. We have to be devotees of Krishna, and whatever we do has to be in pleasing to Krishna. So therefore, such children can actually have a real motivation for being in this world, for doing things, but they know what is the end result. Prabhupada, he said, he talked about studying history from Srimad Bhagavatam, how important that is before you study mundane history. He says, what have you got from mundane history? What has been the contribution from mundane history? He says, our history is millions of years old, whose people have has changed the course of the world. And modern history is only 3,000 years old. This Vedic history talks about so many about the 7 oceans, 7 seas, 7 continents. It's all there. But Bharatvarsha, it was covering the entire world. That was Bharatvarsha. But what modern history does not leave us with much other than hearing about people who are after adoration and worldly things, making enemies, fighting, all these things. But Bhagavatam history gives us the tools to become pure devotees. Very, very interesting, Prabhupada's emphasis. And so if you give them history like that, they study Vedic history, then it can change their life. Okay? There's a beautiful quote that I wanted to read to you about. Yeah. Okay. So in one purport to Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 14th verse, Prabhupada writes, "This is the extraordinary power of Bhagavad history, as if contrasted with useless mundane historical accounts, which ultimately serve no purpose. Although mundane historians justify their work on the plea that we have to learn from history, we can practically see that the world situation is now rapidly deteriorating into unbearable conflict and chaos, while so-called historians stand helplessly by. But the Bhagavad historians who have faithfully heard Srimad Bhagavatam can give perfect and potent instructions for the restoration of a peaceful and blissful world. Therefore, those who are inclined to enrich their intellectual life through the study of history should educate themselves in the historical narrations of Srimad Bhagavatam. This will bring them the perfection of intellectual and spiritual life." You see, so doing all these spiritual, reading Bhagavatam before doing any subject is very, very valuable. So, if you haven't done it so far, do it now. It is never too late. Okay? So we'll go to the next one, science. There's some helpful books on science done by a devotee scientist. Very nice books by Sadhuputra Prabhu, who's not with us anymore. And Nietzsche's IQ is a really nice book. I don't know if you've seen this book. Hidden History of the Human Race by Dhruta Kamra Prabhu. Mechanistic and Non-Mechanistic Science by Sadhuputra. And there's a magazine which is very helpful called the Origin Magazine. I think BBT is still publishing it. So one last one, how to deal with adult topics in Bhagavatam. So this is again a lot of questions I get during seminars. Should I read this part of the Bhagavatam? Should I read that part? I think it's a little adultish, this kind of Bhagavatam. So my humble suggestion is to read everything, because everything in the Bhagavatam is transcendental. And whatever they read from Bhagavatam has to be beneficial. So there are portions in the Bhagavatam which are very adultish, and one may hesitate to read, like the Diti and Kashyapa Muni story, like the Puranjan story. There's a lot of details about the relationship between man and woman. But the point to understand is that they're going to pick up about these things some way or the other. No child grows up any more innocent anymore. Okay? So they're going to pick it up. Whether they pick it up from school, from the internet, from their friends, and I bet you those things you don't want them to pick up from those sources. But what they're going to pick up from the Bhagavatam is going to be put in the right perspective, in the right context, where all these stories show very clearly that when sex or violence is used for the right purpose, then is pleasing to Krishna. In other words, when sex is used for the right purpose, it's meant to create good progeny, which is pleasing to Krishna. In the Gita, Krishna himself says, I am sex life, but done according to religious principles. So therefore, this is the pattern. And so they have many examples of people, of devotees who raise children, who use sex properly, and thereby created wonderful children. And then there's contrasting stories of devotees, of couples who did not do that, used for sense gratification, and the results were different. So when you read them, the child clearly gets the picture. How to use sex in the proper way and how not to use. Okay? So we have many nice examples. The Prajapatis, Daksha, Kashyapa Muni, they created wonderful progeny. Kings such as Uttanapad, Prithu Maharaj, King Rishabdev had 100 sons. Diti and Puranjan story is a very contrasting example. But then we saw the consequences of such action. Both Puranjan and his wife, they suffered extensive misery through the soldiers of time. So it's all there. I remember reading this fourth canto, the the Puranjan story with kids, teenagers, and they enjoyed it. It's not easy. I don't know if any of you have read this section of Puranjan. It's an allegory. This allegory is given by Narad Muni to King Prachina Bharishit. Through the example, he's given the example of Puranjan, who is representing King Prachina Bharishit, to point out to them the dangers of leading a grahastha life, a grahmedi life like he was doing. The dangers of a grahmedi life. So in order to drive home that point, he gives the story of Puranjan, and which was very successful. So it's like an allegory. So in this way, so it's showing how Puranjan and his wife, because they are not leading a proper grahastha life, they suffer too much, a lot of misery until they realize. And so it comes across really clearly. So what I was saying is that the children enjoyed that so much, even with such adultish information and all that description that is in that section. They enjoyed, and they said it's one of their favorite parts in the Bhagavatam, because they understood how a grahastha should live and what is the proper use of grahastha life, of this attraction between man and woman, which is just part of life. This is why we are in the material world. It's due to this attraction of man and woman. So how to deal with that attraction? Is to use it in the proper way, to use it to please Krishna. So it helps. My children, one time, my older one, he had to give class in one of the sections in the Puranjan story, and he was describing how, how appreciative he was in reading these sections, just because it saved him from so much trouble growing up. When you read Kardamuni and Devahuti story, about a good ideal grahastha life, Prabhupada, in many purposes, he discusses the dangers of free mixing of between boys and girls. He talks openly about that, and we were discussing all that, the dangers of free mixing, what it does. How girls are not thrown out in the public to find their husbands. They have to be guided by, older people. The Devahuti, she heard about Kardam Muni through Narad Muni. Just by hearing, she got attracted. She wanted to marry Kardam Muni. And she told her father. And father said, okay, let's check it out. And he went in that airplane. It's not like girls are not allowed to make their choice, but that choice depends on good training. How can they make good choices if the girls are not given proper training? First we have to give them, so that's why Krishna conscious training is both equal, applicable to both girls and boys. So they can make proper selection. So if the training is there, obviously they're going to make good selection. Devahuti made a good selection because she was well trained by her father. And then she found her somebody she wanted to get married, and her father was happy and gave her that selection. So nowhere in the Vedic culture is this slave mentality. Women were treated with respect, but everybody had their duties. We are bound by some psychological, physiological, psychological nature. You know? So in this way, girls can be and boys can be raised very nicely, understanding. Even as teenagers, when they read all this, they understand. Even younger than that, they see. Because they're all living in grahastha families. They have their mothers and fathers there. It's not like they're living, in brahmachari ashrams. They're with their parents, right? So they understand. But they get the proper training. This is how to live a decent, proper. And when, so children train in that, in these principles, when suppose they do get distracted and they fall down, at least they fall down on the platform of goodness. And then they get up again. But there could be some fall down, there could be some distraction. Because you have given the right training, they know maybe they fall down with somebody who's a devotee or something. It's not so bad. Right? So what I was saying, that the point is that in Bhagavatam, everything is transcendental, and there's a complete training of the children when they read Bhagavatam, from any perspective of life. Whether it's Vanaprastha, whether it's Sannyas, whether it's Grihastha, whether it's Brahmachari. No matter what ashram we are in, those verses, those stories are there, the philosophy is there, the examples are there. So this is all about Bhagavatam. I think we'll move on to our next section, the last one, which is preaching is the essence. Here we go. So we've done the setting up the home environment, books are the basis, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and now the preaching is the essence. This is the extracurricular activities. What should we do to augment their faith in Krishna consciousness? So children's faith increases when they teach it to others. So people think, student life is all about studying. When they get older, then they can preach or teach. But teaching or preaching is the best type of learning. If you had to ever give class, how much you need to prepare? A lot more than when you were a student. If you have to teach Bhakti Shastri versus if you've been a student of Bhakti Shastri, there's a big difference. Huge difference. You really have to know the subject in and out, in and out. So everybody has that experience. When you have to explain something to somebody, then you really have to know that subject, really thoroughly, deeply, right? So in the same way it works with children. That's why older children are encouraged to teach the younger brothers, because the material becomes very strong for themselves and the younger one benefits. So in this way, when children go out and preach, share Krishna with others. It develops in them the mood of compassion, not to see people as some kind of fallen down people, we are so much better, that mood of holier than thou, I'm a devotee, see, look at you, you're so fallen, you're eating meat, so dirty. No, we don't want to give that kind of training. What we want to give them is compassion, the ability to see everybody as spirit, soul, and to see them as part and parcel in Krishna. So that happens only when we share Krishna with others. That's why book distribution is so nice, because it develops in us the mood of compassion, giving people who are suffering this mercy of Srila Prabhupada's books. Right? So children's faith in Krishna consciousness increases. When they give something, they have to be able to explain it nicely, articulate in a way that they understand very well. They become proud to be who they are. They become, happy because somebody takes to Krishna consciousness. When they give out books or something, then they come back home and they see that person come to the temple. It's a great source of pride and happiness. Children do really well when they give out Krishna and they applaud it for it, right? That's why we were doing so many programs in Boise. We were going to not only in Harinam and book distribution, but also to school and college programs, explaining to them about Krishna consciousness, getting prior permission from them to present the Vedic philosophy to them. And a lot of them would agree and we would go. And as they were growing, we were going to higher and higher grades. Like when they were little, we would go to small, primary school, present the philosophy over there, have them try to present or at least help us. If we were presenting, they would observe. And then we started going to higher secondary schools and then finally to high schools. And finally they get to speak after years of watching and helping. Because even when we were speaking, they were helping with chanting, prasadam distribution. Sometimes you'd put dots on their faces, put tilak. So it was a whole program, where you talked about Krishna consciousness and they asked questions. So it's giving them a pride. See, I'm a devotee and I'm giving Krishna, and see how everybody likes it. Because invariably Krishna is so attractive, right? Everybody loves, they start, you think they're not going to take it, but everybody ends up liking it. And what to speak when there's chanting, music starts and then prasadam distribution, it's always a hit. Even if they're very inimical or very reserved, they all end up becoming warm afterwards, So especially if they see children, they become very happy. So in this way, they're learning a lot of things. They're learning public speaking, communication, how to present Krishna consciousness, their faith in their identity as devotees. Then also temple programs, taking leadership positions for children in festivals and in dramas, very, very important. Which child in public schools gets to perform every festival? I know in our temple we made so many devotees just by getting these families, children of non-devotee families, and engaging them in dramas, and they would start coming to the temple. They would get trapped, because where would you find these opportunities for your children to be on stage and act and become Lord Ram or a demon? Or it's really a lot of fun. There's not that many opportunities out there. The things that children learn in Krishna consciousness, they become all-rounders. In everything, they become all-rounders. There's no such facility anywhere. Where do you get the facility of public speaking? All the public speaking that my children became so good at was only due to being a devotee. Going and presenting Krishna consciousness here, there, in the temple, speaking out, becoming MC for the festival or something, Prabhupada gave us everything, every facility to grow spiritually, materially, for our children to grow. We don't have to look outside. We don't have to spend so much money trying to find this course or that course. Just find it here. It's right here. Prabhupada has given us so much. How hard he worked to translate these books. How hard he worked. And not only that, how much, in those olden times you had to be so rich just to put that kind of artwork that we have in our books. The artwork that is available in the Bhagavatam. And what to speak of that, he translates these books, and then not only that, then he takes all the writings of the acharyas and puts it all together, condenses it and gives it us. Everything for us. So easy. All we have to do is just pick up and read it and assimilate it. All that hard work, which is impossible for anyone, which would take millions and millions of dollars to do it. Prabhupada did for us. And here we have these books, and we don't read them, and we are not giving that benefit to our next generation. And during the student days, this is the time where they have the time to do it. You know, when you enter Grahastha life really gets busy. But the way to do it as Grahasthas is read with your children. If you ever have a desire to read Bhagavatam, just begin with your children. It's the easiest way. Just find the time and sit down, and you'll see. Over time you would have finished all the books. All the books. You know, Jayapataka Swami, he just saw the books in Mayapur, these books, and he was so happy. He said, he said 3 times, you know, because we are now getting the 6th canto ready, you know, so it'll be 6th canto. And he says, you should begin Bhakti Vaibhav for children, giving them a degree for Bhakti Vaibhav. Some kind of arrangement where if they do all these 6 books, they will be given a certificate, a degree certificate from the Mayapur institution, just like the adults. Why not? Right? And he really meant it. 3 times he said that. I have his picture. Then I met Bhakti Chaitanya Swami in Mauritius, and he was very happy, and he said, we need to do something with these books for the children. And I met Giriraj Swami, and he was so happy with these books. And he also felt the urgent need to use these books among children. Now they're teaching them in Mayapur and Vrindavan school as a regular curriculum, and in many schools in Europe, homeschooling co-ops and everything. So what I'm saying is that just do it, and you'll see the results. So here, so in the same way, preaching is very, very beneficial. You know, you can also go on book distribution with your children once a week, whatever you can manage. Go and give out these books, and you'll see it helped them to build their identity, and the temple and home programs as well. Festivals are a very nice way of you know, giving them this culture of Krishna consciousness. It goes very deep when they identify themselves and take part in all these. See how these children are taking part in cooking here in one of the pictures, in drama. It's such a fun way. When Krishna was in Vrindavan 5,000 years ago, every day was a festival. The Brajvasis were looking for any excuse to go out on the street and celebrate all the time. Anything is a time for you know, enjoyment and celebration. So Prabhupada has given us so many festivals. Do them, observe them. When we did homeschooling, every other day was a festival. So our homeschooling was all about reading about that person. You know, if it was Ram Navami or Krishna Janmashtami, we would spend 2 weeks reading about Krishna, writing scripts on Krishna, you know, doing dramas, and whatever work, study work was all based on that unit festival. And I realized that they were learning more on those days than normal days, because there was so much motivation and incentive. There's a festival coming. Okay? And this way we observed every festival, you know. Even appearance days and disappearance days of acharyas we were celebrating. And there's a lot of education going on during these times. A lot of practical skills that they are learning. Cleaning, organizing, decorating, all these are skills that they develop. They learn how to be responsible. They know that no festival can be arranged without the help of their friends. They learn to share things. They learn to open their homes. All these qualities, they are effortlessly given to our children. Vacations, very important for our children. They need to have fun. And these spiritual vacations are really very, very beneficial. We used to go on Braj Mandal Parikram which is, you may have heard, is 1 month long walk in I don't know how many kilometers. We were walking like 10 kilometers a day. It was through all the fields of Braj. Can you imagine? And it was just so nectarian. And and they still are going on in Kartik. And you stop at different places to hear about Krishna's pastime. And it's so shocking that there are so many places. You just read it in Krishna book, but you don't actually see it till you go on this parikram. To us, it was like Krishna book became alive. You read Krishna book about all these places, and then suddenly you see that it just became alive. It's shocking that actually there are so many small details in past different places where Krishna's pastimes were performed. All the holy dhams are there. Bajrika ashram is there. You know, Kedarnath is there. There's Rameshwaram, right? All in Braj. Krishna told his father, "You don't have to go anywhere. I'll bring everything here." And it's so amazing when we were going to Bajrika ashram. Suddenly the air turned cold. It is true. It becomes cold because it's up in the mountains. The air changes, and it's actually, cold, freezing. The kunda water there is very freezing. Very beautiful places. So you can take 1 month off and go. So for this is the culture of Krishna consciousness. When children are exposed to it, it goes very deep. Very deep. These are not the things that they will ever give up or forget who they are. It helps them to identify themselves as devotees. And then if you cannot do Braj Mandal Parikram, then you can go on an organized tour by sannyasis and temples where they have everything organized nicely. Buses are going every day, coming back every day to the temple. They have nice prasadam. Everything is taken care of. You don't have to worry about anything, just hear and chant. Just hear the wonderful stories by these sannyasis. So they are easier to handle rather than being on Braj Mandal where you're sleeping under the stars in a tent with a bucket of water every night rationed to you. So, yeah. And then every night they enact a play, improvise a play, and they do a play for the kids. All the kids get together as soon as they come back to their tents for the night, for the evening. Then they go and practice for a play, and they put up a play. Really wonderful. So many devotees to interact with, to have fun with, And then you take care of each other. You get sick also. So these are the boot camp, the transcendental boot camp, we call it. Because they're heavy, it's austere. But what a nice, and then, you realize that, my kids realize that you really, to live, you don't need much. Maybe a 6-foot space to lie down. That's what we were doing. We had to sleep on the floor in the tent. How much does a person need? And we were so happy, getting up early in the morning and taking a cold shower and walking through the fields, the sugarcane fields. Especially over there, the sand is so soft. Braj is so soft early in the morning. So we have to sometimes sacrifice all the, the school and all that just to take our children out and experience all this, What is that? 1-2 months of their whole life. But this is the time, if it's a crucial time in their life, it's a good time to stop and think. Not worry about, so much of success, academic success. It will come. But if they lose Krishna consciousness, one time a sannyasi came to Boise and they had just entered college and they were all like, so much work and so much work. And he happened to come after that, and he said, "Okay, so how are you doing?" And they said, "Really well." He said, "How are you doing in your school, in your college?" "Maharaj, we are doing really well." "You getting straight A's?" He said, "Yes, Maharaj." "So how many times are you getting for Mangal Arti?" And they started looking down, "Maharaj, maybe twice a week." "Okay, so you're getting an A in your college, but in your spiritual life, in your spiritual college, you're getting an F. So don't you think you need to balance it? Maybe get a B in this part and also balance it up with a B." So again, we need all these, that people That's why, association with these great souls is very important, because they give their cutting words, and it really goes deep. You see? So, grabbing association of these saintly people, we should get a lot of them coming to your temple, going to Brajmal, and you get a lot of those sannyasis over there who come and give classes. So grabbing those opportunities, going to Mayapur, perhaps doing Bhakti Shastri there, or doing some course there, meeting, for our children meeting all these saintly people. All this, because so many questions come, what do I do? How do I, make their spiritual life, more, dynamic? And what do I do? They somehow seem to be losing it all, So there's many, many things you can do. Discipline, unless there's a question on that, I can skip and we can. What time is it? Is there time for this? 3. Oh, 3? Yeah, okay, this time. So discipline, anybody has any problems with discipline? Anybody has any problems with discipline? Or their children? Or their children? What kind? Huh? On this topic? Okay, let's stop. So let's stop and get some questions.
Hare Krishna. Mataji, in our yatra, there are few devotees that engage, like the youth. We have what do they call it? There's a drama group and so on. And then for festivals, there may be a Namahata leader or somebody who will get the kids together. I think most of the parents are waiting for somebody else to engage their children in something. So we don't have, and I was actually thinking quite deeply about it, there should be an ISKCON Grihastha council here. And all the parents should come together and arrange everything without having to rely on the temple. They can arrange the vacations, they can arrange the dramas, they can arrange the getting together of the children on days and so on. But like they're relying on 1 or 2 people to arrange that and call their kids. But if all the grihasthas get together, then in one sense we don't even have to get permission from the management here to do certain things, because this is a grihastha issue. If they want to bring a mridanga player from India, grihasthas get together and sponsor his ticket and arrange his accommodation and keep him for 1 year and see to his expenses. He'll teach the children. But ownership has to be taken by the grihasthas.
Yes. I think that's really a great idea, is to get together and initiate some things for our children. Take that step. Especially dramas during festivals, very, very important. You must be having, right? Janmashtami dramas and all that. Yes. So I mean, doing the practice plays, it's all something families can do and take leadership and dances, dramas, music, kirtan, arrangement, who's going to sing what, all these things. Vacations. Going on yatras. And this way the children, especially the youth, if they are feeling like they're losing it, they'll get new energy to go to these holy dhams, and that too with their devotee friends and parents. It will be very nice and enlivening for them. Sunday school, are you doing Sunday school? Or physically here? Again, we can keep a lot of children. You probably need more volunteers to help and make more classrooms. Okay, yes, very nice. Any other questions? Okay, so discipline is the last one here. Prabhupada's formula for discipline was to give them a loving propensity to, when they get a loving propensity to love Krishna, then they can be educated to the topmost standard, and then whatever you ask them, they will do. In other words, get them to be obedient out of loving spirit, rather than doing it negatively through punishment. One should simply revive their Krishna consciousness, simply should engage them in Krishna consciousness. The more they become engaged and get a higher taste, then automatically the discipline problems will go less, right? When they develop that higher taste. So we need to develop this love and trust between parents, because this is very natural. So when we become very strict with them, and we are very, very, we become too strict with them, then they become rebellious, right? And if we become too easy with them, too permissive with them, oh, you can do whatever, you can make your choice, whatever, you want to be Krishna conscious, you can, you don't be, well, then children don't do well. They have no respect for elders. If you've seen children who are not given enough discipline, they don't respect. They're not respectful to elders, right? And they become they lack self-esteem actually. Children like to be disciplined. They feel like they are cared for. You see? Just like a dog, if he has an owner, he's going like this, happy. You see them? A dog with an owner. And a street dog, how does he feel? He has no owner. He's a nut, right? So in the same way, when children are disciplined, when they are trained properly, and they are, disciplined, then they actually develop self-esteem. So some discipline is always necessary, but that discipline should come out of the loving propensity to serve Krishna. It should come from their engagement in Krishna consciousness. They must obey because they want to please Krishna, they want to please you. It should come from that level. Because it's very powerful. Children do want to please their parents. Students do want to please their teachers. And that should be their incentive to wanting to obey you. Not out of, I'm going to beat you, out of force or punishment. The incentive should be, they want to please, because they're so thankful for all that we do for them. They can see that, right? So the best way is to keep them engaged, always giving them a higher taste. Because if you don't give them a higher taste and we simply discipline them, it doesn't work. Because the impurities of a misbehavior is still there. It doesn't get purified. So we should be firm when there's necessary, but we should give, the children should love and fear the teachers. They should love but also fear, both. So there should be love and good training, both should come together. Any questions on discipline? I think it's pretty simple, Prabhupada's formula. So here are the resources, and which I've already spoken about. Unless there's any question from any part of the seminar. Anybody wants to know anything about these books? Any activities or anything, exactly what we do? Yes.
Hare Krishna. I'm curious about these books. I want to know how long it would take to cover maybe the first canto book. What is the expected time that...
Depending on how many days of the week you're doing it. All depends on that. Okay.
Thank you, Ma'am.
Like if you're doing one chapter a week, then there's 19 chapters in the first canto. That's 19 weeks. Okay. About 6 months. And like I said, you don't have to do every activity given in that book. You can pick and choose, because we give a lot for variety. Okay. So you finish that, and then you go to the second canto, which is only 10 chapters. Like many people, adults are doing Bhakti Vaibhav, 1 chapter a week, so the same lines. But when we were doing Bhagavatam, we were doing a chapter a day. Yeah, because we were doing it every day. So it depends on how many times a week you're doing. If you're doing it every day, it's going to be a chapter a day, or two days, 1 chapter, like that.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, do you go through the Sanskrit also with the children? And do you go through the philosophy parts also, or just focus on the stories?
No, we do. We read every verse, but not the purports. The purports the parents read or teachers read, and they give the essential points from the purpose in the form of discussion. Because children are not able to go through these long purports. And we don't discuss every purport. Just the purpose that we feel that this is really going to be good discussion, and it's important, whatever. So you just read the purports, and then you pick out the ones you want to discuss, some essential points from that purport, But even if you had no time to read the purports, if you just did translations and want to discuss it, there's always some benefit from anything, even minimally, if you do that, because your experience is going to be a lot more than them. Experience of life in general. Right? But if you can read some purpose, naturally the conversation will go deeper, because you'll pick up some nice essential points. So basically they're reading the whole thing because you're giving these things to them instead of they doing it. Okay?
I'm also a bit nervous, like when you read Bhagavatam, there's a lot of complex topics and ideas. And how do you teach something to someone if you don't understand it yourself, or if they ask you questions that you can't answer?
Well, the first thing is that you don't have to know everything. Even if you don't know, it's okay. You can tell them you don't know, and you both together go into the purpose and find the answers. It's really a lot of fun. Many times I couldn't answer the questions, and we would find it in the purpose together. You see? It's okay. You don't have to know everything, and you can always find out and ask somebody if you don't understand certain concepts. And not everything has to be understood in detail. You can even skip things that you feel that, it can come a bit later or something. But you have to read through everything. Sometimes certain sections we would go faster. Certain sections we would take more time. But we read everything. Everything. We didn't skip anything. You want a question?